Yeah.
Yeah. Twitch is the slowest for me for some reason.
Like it's not showing up on my page yet. I know people may be watching. I don't really care. That's not
Yeah, don't
bothering
say
me.
anything super embarrassing. Someone could be watching. So if anyone can see us, this is Rob from Normal America and my buddy DroneTech. We're going to be doing a debate next week sometime, apparently, on the Russia collusion hoax. So we're just going to talk about some of that today because we both happen to have a day off now that I quit my job. So how you doing today?
Oh, fine. Hold on. Actually, I'm not public yet.
Okay, well we're streaming on my stream, but there's only one person watching, so. I hope Drone's not talking to me. I think he's just talking to his audience.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh no,
No,
that's
I
fine.
wasn't. I just keep forgetting to key the mic. I should probably just put it on voice activation.
That's what I do. Yeah.
But yeah, dude, I'm just frustrated mostly by the fact that what we're probably going to talk about, like the media is not talking about at all. Like they're just covering it up. And in fact, if you read, a lot of the headlines are real misleading. Like they're written in such a way as to make you just like, oh, I'll read the headline and I'm not going to dig any further into it. I'm just going to dismiss it now. But yeah, that's pretty much it. How are you doing, man?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. So changed my job. I actually have today off, and then next week I go in. I'll be going like 10 hours a day into the office. So I just figured, hey, I got some time off today, and we needed to kind of talk about what we're going to do with this debate. I don't even know who we're debating. I think Pisco's one. Do you know who the other person is?
I don't know, man. Yeah, I'm not real sure.
Hopefully they bring in the big guns. Let's get Jake Tapper or something in there, right? I'll debate him. I'll be happy. But no, I mean this. I can tell you what the debate's going to be. They're going the same way that you always see with this crowd. They're going to play semantics. So their argument will be redefining what they mean by the term collusion. And so they'll define collusion as anytime someone talked to a Russian, that's collusion, is what they'll say. And then they'll try to say, see, the fact that there was theoretically collusion, we did have people in Trump's campaign that were talking to Russians, that justifies the entire investigation. And it's a bad faith argument, and everybody knows that the original implication that was Trump and his team illegally conspired with Russians to influence the 2016 election, and there is no evidence of that whatsoever. So now they'll fall back on this other position where they completely change what they were talking about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just changed everything, so nobody could hear anything I was saying. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, and I watched your video yesterday. I recommend everybody, if you need to be brought up to speed with everything that's going on, Robert just did like an hour and a half long video yesterday, laying it all out. You should definitely check that out. But what just came out yesterday is pretty damning. Like you said, it's like it pretty much shows that if you're really worried about Russian collusion and election interference, then you need to see what's going on, the corruption in the FBI and what's going on with Mueller and all of that, because it proves that, like you said, that there was an actual coup attempt against the president.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've talked about this a long time, you know, ever since that we started collaborating, this was one of the first issues we talked about. And one of the things I really respected about you was you had the same take as me, is we never said that if Trump or his team broke the law with foreign influence and stuff like that, that he shouldn't be prosecuted. We said if he broke the law, then he should be charged. And I don't, you know, and I think we both also agreed. Also, we want equal application of the law. So if we're going to say that failing to register as a foreign agent and lobbying is a crime and we're going to prosecute that, I have no problem with that. Just do it on all sides. And what we could see is in every single incident when it comes to the FBI and the Mueller investigation, prosecuting people around Trump, we could see that exact same crime that they prosecuted being done by Democrats or by intel agents even worse. So, for example, the FARA violations, Paul Manafort sits in solitary confinement in part because he failed to register as a foreign lobbyist for Russia, or actually for a Ukrainian pro-Russian, in 2013. The document says that he worked on that foreign lobbying with the Podesta Group, who was the campaign manager of Hillary Clinton. Yet the Podesta Group got away with just signing retroactive paperwork. Now, how can anyone justify this? And that, to me, is where we win this debate. I think that what we need to focus on is getting them to admit that, oh my God, these things that Trump's team did with Russia is so bad. It's so terrible what they did. And don't get them to speak in specifics, but in abstract. What is it exactly that warranted an investigation? Take the word Trump out of it. What are you saying? And they'll be like, well, like, if you're failing to register as a foreign lobbyist for Russia, then you should be charged. And then we'll be able to prove, okay, well, Hillary's team did that. Why aren't you up in arms about that? And they know that it's all a lie.
Right. Well, and it's also that the media just hasn't told them, like, and even if they don't watch the media sort of disseminates out through people and just talk around the water cooler or whatever, on Messenger. People just kind of go with the flow, and the flow from the mainstream media is that there's nothing here. It's all a bunch of right-wing conspiracy theories. And so, yeah, that's why you run into that. But you're right. It's like, what is your main issue with this? Is it that a foreign power is meddling in our election? Well, if that's the case, they bought some Facebook ads, and there was something with Pokemon Go, and that's pretty much it. And they had some rallies, which the media, CNN, MSNBC, promoted the anti-Trump rallies that they did. So it's like, and then on top of that, we find out that, this is all based on the dossier, which was paid for, by the Democrat Party, by the Hillary campaign. And then they always go back to, oh, well, it was the GOP that actually started it, which I don't think that's true.
It's not true.
Right. But, and so now we're finding out, after all this, we're now finding out that the guy that Christopher Steele was getting information from was directly coming from the Kremlin and was a Russian spy. So it's like, if this is bothering you, once again, it's just like over and over again, everything that they accuse us of is what they're actively engaged in. It's like, that's what they did. They helped a foreign power interfere in our elections.
It's exactly right. And that's what I'm getting at. Like, I respect people that disagree with me, but that are consistent in their positions. So, like, what I argued from the get-go, like, let's go back to the infamous Don Jr., where he met a Russian lawyer allegedly to get dirt against Hillary Clinton. That was the allegation. Now, he never did get that dirt. He walked out of the meeting after 10 minutes. But I contended from the get-go that I don't think that that's a big deal. I don't think that it should be a crime. I think it's dirty. I think that we see every major political party or political candidacy campaign do this, where they try to get dirt on their opponents, be it domestic or foreign sources. But I didn't think it was a crime. I also didn't think it was a crime for Hillary Clinton to try to get dirt on Trump from Russia. I don't. And I think that's a huge mistake that people make. That they're trying to make this claim that's like, oh, it's Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton in this story wasn't the problem. The crime, the corruption is not people trying to get dirt from foreign nationals. I don't really care about that. The crime was the FBI under Obama using that dirt to spy on a president. That's the crime. And so if you're the type of person that says, no, I think what Don Jr. did was illegal, and you say, and I think what the Democrats and Hillary did was illegal, okay, we disagree. But at least you're a consistent person. What aggravates me, and I think you, is the same people that hyperventilated about connections to Russia, when you could prove the Democrats had the exact same connections, all of a sudden they're unconcerned.
Right. It's just, it's just like bad faith altogether. It's like, are you genuinely ignorant, and now you have the right information, you change your opinion? But no, they don't. And that's what's so annoying. And it's like the media does the exact same thing in regards to everything. I mean, it's like the whole everywhere today I keep seeing that the media is parroting something Hillary Clinton said about Trump not guaranteeing a peaceful transfer of power or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but Hillary Clinton also said that denying or not accepting the election results in 2016 would be an attack on democracy. And yet that's all they've done. And so how am I supposed to take it? And it kind of always brings me back. I don't want to get too conspiratorial here, but to that KGB agent who defected. And he talked about ideological subversion and how the purpose of it was to make people unable to make, easy decisions, really common decisions, because they're so wrapped up in these political arguments. And I feel like that's what we're seeing right now. It's like the media, I don't know if they're using it as a defense where they accuse everybody of doing what they're actually doing. And it's disturbing that everything is this corrupted.
Well, then they're no longer the media. They're just the propaganda outlet for the deep state. That's. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, we're having an entire discussion because the media asked Trump. They said, win, lose, or draw, will there be a peaceful transfer of power? Because we see riots occurring right now. And like, I was just talking about this in my video before I saw it here with you. It's like, what the hell is Trump supposed to say? Okay, win, lose, or draw. So let's say I win. How do I prevent people from rioting? The Democrats are the ones that have, incentivized them to riot, but somehow it's Trump's fault. And meanwhile, why is no one asking Joe Biden this question? Wasn't Hillary Clinton just out there last week saying, under no circumstances should Joe Biden concede? Haven't the Democrats for 4 years refused to have a peaceful transition of power? And so it's always them speaking, well, hypothetically, if the Republicans hypothetically did this, it would be terrible. But we actually did it, and it's no big deal. So hypothetically, if Don Jr. would have got dirt on Hillary from Russians, it would have been a crime, it would have been a disaster. However, it's no big deal that Hillary Clinton actually paid for Kremlin dirt on Trump, which was then used to spy on him.
Right, how does this not create... It's like, it reminds me of Wray the other day, and man, this director Wray is just really getting more and more slimy. I don't know if you saw the other day where he testified and he was talking about, right now they're interfering in the election and they're doing that by denigrating Joe Biden. Like, really? Denigrating Joe Biden? That's the attack on democracy in the elections now. So we're not even allowed to criticize Joe Biden without it being like, oh, it's Russians that are doing it. And how does that not create like some serious, like they talk about, oh, Russia's trying to sow discourse discord in the country. And yet it's like, if that's the case, then you're helping them do it right now. Like, is Wray some sort of a Russian plant? I know that sounds crazy, but it's like he's doing it. When you tell like one half the country that basically their political stance during an election, like they can't even criticize their political opposition now because it's the Russians, that's scary to me. And like that's going to create serious division in this country.
Yeah, and
when you have the FBI director basically, I mean, it's just like I said before. I've said this a lot, but the only legitimate election is one that they win.
Exactly.
And the only legitimate criticism is of their opposition. You can't even criticize. It used to be you are racist or sexist or something like that if you criticize them, but now you're literally like a Russian asset if you do it.
And they did the same crap with Brexit, right? Oh yeah, pre-election Brexit. Well, listen, everyone. And then Brexit won, and they were like, oh no, we're not going to do that. And by the way, all the people that are advocating Brexit are really extremists working on the behest of Russia. Like, these were arguments they made. It's nonsense. And, like, look, there's so many problems. Like, I'm glad you brought that up because there's so many problems with that. One is the fundamental problem that Russia is not our biggest geopolitical adversary. It's China. Who's China favoring? Oh, that's right, Joe Biden. But Christopher Wray couldn't be bothered to talk about that, could he? So our biggest adversary is favoring Joe Biden, but that's not the story. The story is Russia. Russia supposedly favors Trump. So even if we look at it through that, so does that mean that we can't make legitimate criticisms of Biden? So I can't say that Biden looks like he's having cognitive failure because somehow that's a pro-Russian argument? And here's the problems you get with it. I warned my friends on the left about this that are progressive. I said, here's a problem that you're going to see. You remember when these memes, like we were talking about the Facebook memes and the Pokemon Go memes, that 12 Russians that working for a troll farm did, right? And I warned people of this in 2017 because they were like, oh my God, this is a big deal. I'm like, how are we even taking this story seriously? So 12 Russians put up a couple hundred memes online, most of which weren't seen until after the election. And you think that outweighed like $500 billion that was spent by Hillary Clinton and having the entire media in her pocket? And I said, here's the problem. If you look carefully at what they're saying those Russian memes were, you know what a lot of them were? Black Lives Matter, pro-LGBT. And I was like, there will come a time when the Democrats decide that groups like Black Lives Matter no longer benefit them, that they'll say, oh, Black Lives Matter is just Russian propaganda. So if you think that Black Lives Matter is important, they're laying the groundwork for saying, oh, well, you're just parroting Russian propaganda. What did Adam Schiff come out and say 3 weeks ago? Oh, these riots and stuff. A lot of it, we see that Russia's currently fueling division in the Black Lives Matter movement. Schiff, they're already doing it. And I'm just like, you stupid morons. We'll get to the point where it's like, oh, you're for the gay pride parade in New York? That's Russia propaganda. You can't be for that. It's so dumb.
Right. They found like the ultimate. Well, it's like, how many people is that actually working with, though? And the other thing is like, China is interfering, and it's like, who is China interfering on behalf of? Clearly, it's so obvious. I mean, it's the people that had nothing but praise for Fidel Castro when he died, and championed his literacy program and all that. Right. It's those people who China it wants, obviously. Right. Because they know that they're at least sympathetic to China. And you mentioned the video, like people seeing Biden spurging out like him, or any of them, Wrangle looking like he pooped his pants and walking off stage the other day. Or Nadler, Nadler. I get them. They kind of both look the same, but
maybe I'll walk off like that here in a bit.
Right. Well, one thing that I'm still seeing a lot of this, and there's a video going around right now, if I can find it, from CNN, where they go up to a Trump supporter and they're like, the Trump supporter said something about seeing a video of Biden, right? And he's like, oh, I've seen Biden and he's blah, blah, blah. And then the CNN reporter that's there like pulls up on his phone that it's a fake video or something. And he shows it. And that's like the whole thing, like, oh, he didn't know it was a fake video. And I've seen this. They've been doing this for a while. I'm pretty sure it really started with Pelosi when Trump had retweeted some video, a segment that Fox had made on Pelosi just acting like she's having embolisms or something. And then the media came out and was like, oh, he retweeted a fake video, but they had a completely different video that had been just like barely slowed down. So it sounded like she was slurring her words. Okay. It's like, you can find plenty of videos that aren't slowed down of Pelosi where she sounds like she's slurring her words, but the media put that out there. So people who are Pelosi supporters or Democrats, or maybe not quite, and definitely not red pilled, normies or whatever, will see a video of Pelosi and just assume that it's manipulated in some way. They did this. They're doing the same thing with Biden right now. And it's like a twofer thing, because you got Wray saying that denigrating Joe Biden is Russian propaganda. And then on top of that, they're saying, oh, well, these videos are manipulated. They're doctored.
Right.
So that's another. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like they're literally fact. I mean, Carpe Diem. It's a story I haven't talked about. But Carpe Diem, who's one of the people that does these memes on Twitter, he did this meme. There was this viral video. And people should check this out. I don't even know if you can still find this because Twitter suspended him. There was a viral tweet of a little black boy and a little white boy, and they see each other and they run and they hug each other and then they run together away. And Carpe Diem changed it to show, this is CNN showing, a Trump rally, and it was the white or the black kid running from the white kid. And then he's like, but here's the full story, and it was them hugging, right? He's being sued by the parents of those kids right now. He was like, literally, he's being sued. He was kicked off Twitter. And like, there's all these fact checks, just like there was the fact checks. There's fact checks of like the meme of Donald Trump like giving the CNN logo a stunner. They're like, actually, this was edited footage. And you you shake your head. You're like, holy shit, are you kidding me? That's the caliber of people that. But at the same time, where they want to hyperventilate about, oh, this was taken out of context, or this footage was slowed down, this is fake footage. The most harmful hoax that's being perpetuated on this country is the fact that the media to this day, and Joe Biden has made it a central platform of his, is still perpetuating the Trump called Nazis good people hoax by selectively showing footage and not showing the full, where Trump specifically says, when I say good people, I'm not talking about the KKK and Nazis. They're terrible people. They edit that section out, and then they play that edited footage. I don't see Twitter flagging that. And we've had this conversation before. What do you think's going to happen when you convince people in this country that, one, it's okay to use physical violence against Nazis, and second, that the president's endorsing Nazis?
Right. Anything goes.
And that's what...
You already...
Yep.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say. And so that's a hoax from edited video by CNN, by MSNBC, by Joe Biden's camp, and they don't have a problem with that. That's actually leading to violence in the streets. Last night, the night before, 100 days in Portland, that sort of mentality, that sort of hoax is leading to that. They don't have a problem with that. But God forbid that Trump retweet Carpe Diem showing, a clearly fake meme. And I'm sorry, like, don't get me wrong. I think that I've personally been responsible of retweeting or believing a video that it turned out was edited later. I've apologized when that happens. I get that. But the fact that the media could so shamelessly do it when it benefits them, and then they have to tell us like, oh yeah, this video of this video of Donald Trump like is a bodybuilder, which clearly like his head over Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's actually an edited footage. That's not Trump's real body. We just wanted to comment on that.
I know. Like, it's just gaslighting. Here, this is a really quick one to show this, what I was talking about.
Sure.
On my thing here, because I couldn't figure out to do the share screen on this. That people actually have to click it, or I don't know. Anyway, check this out, folks. What?
Which one was it? I couldn't see it.
1 second. Oh, here it is. 1 second. Well, I hate that video because I've seen my mom retweeted that video. They're talking of, so I just played the video of the CNN guy going up. He goes up to a Trump supporter and he's like, "What news do you follow?" And the Trump supporter is like, "Well, whoever agrees with me." It's like they got all these people that are like stereotypical rednecky people and got them to give just the answers. They probably got a ton of answers and then just made those ones. But the guy mentions when Biden fell asleep, that video where he's like giving an interview and he like falls asleep. Clearly fake. I mean, like I saw it. My mom retweeted or Facebooked it to me or something. And I'm like, Mom, that's clearly fake, you know? I mean, there are people out there believing some of these videos that are fake, but it was a joke. I thought it was just supposed to be funny.
Right. And the one I remember was I went to my in-laws' place and they were like, "Did you see Nancy Pelosi at the State of the Union ripped a Bible?" I was like, "Yeah, that's a Babylon Bee article. That didn't happen." Right. She ripped up like a copy of Trump's speech, but they were like, and then the picture's hilarious. Like she's one of these strong men that just ripped this Bible in half. You know, I was like, "No, that's fake." And I didn't even know it. But when they showed me the picture, I was like, that has to be fake. I watched the State of the Union. That did not happen. So I get it. People believe this stuff, and I understand. Again, I'm not denigrating, and I feel the same on the left. There are people that maybe see something ridiculous about Trump. I don't blame them for believing if it was edited. That's the world we live in. But what really gets my go is when the media people are falling for these hoaxes, and they're shamelessly pushing actual harmful hoaxes that they themselves have edited.
Hands up, don't shoot is a left-wing conspiracy theory that persists to this day, leading to death and destruction to this day. Has a body count, has a price tag on it, and yet what are they tweeting about? They're constantly fear-mongering about QAnon people. It's like every day that's what it is.
Well, and that's one of the things that I don't understand. Like, you know me, I don't really agree with the QAnon stuff. I think if you followed it as a means to research, that's fine. But I keep hearing about, there were actual 2 Democratic senators that pushed a bill to declare QAnon a terror group. Can someone show me one town that they've lit a building on fire? One person that they beat on the street? Yet I could watch every day Black Lives Matter and Antifa doing that. And they say, "Oh, no, that's..." So what? People believe in something that you don't believe. Okay. How does that make them a terrorist?
That's like the debate you had yesterday with that guy. I'm gonna say guy because it was clearly a guy to me. I'm sorry.
Well, listen, you can't. When we're on Dylan's channel, they'll boot you off. I'll end up debating myself.
I know it, but I'll do it. But it's like under threat of force, though. It's like, what's up with that? I messaged Dylan and I gave him I sent him the clip of Star Trek Next Generation episode where Picard's being tortured. About the 4 lights, how many lights do you see? He says 4 lights, and they shock him until they're trying to get him to say 5 lights, break him. It's like, that's essentially what you're the Cardassian, man, and you're shocking me every time I don't say what you want me to say. And it's, even though it's the truth, but it's the truth you don't want said.
So
that's a funny environment to have a good faith debate in. But anyway.
Well, then, so I just talked about this on my video here, but here's my feelings on it. If you ask me if you're not being a jerk to me and you ask me to call you a certain pronoun, I'll do it. I think that you have an illness, and I think they get upset when you say it's an illness, but that's literally the definition, because if you feel that you're in the wrong body. I look at it like I'd look at someone who's bipolar. I think that I'm part autistic. I think I have Asperger's. I have friends that are schizophrenic, bipolar. I don't hate them because of their illness, but I don't believe the voices in their head are real, right? Well, it's the same here. If you ask me to call you sheep, that's fine. I'll call you sheep, because if you don't, then it just distracts from the argument. So they don't want to talk about Antifa anymore. They just want to talk about the pronouns. So that's why I say whatever pronoun that they want. But it's ironic in that debate, because the irony is this is how stupid this call for demanding that people call you the pronouns you want. Because what you're saying is society must view me in a way that I have determined. Well, that's the opposite of what society is. Like, for example, if I could say that I demand you call me a certain pronoun, why can't I demand that you call me a certain adjective? Right? So you're not allowed, you have to call me skinny. But Rob, you're not skinny. Who gives a shit? You're being a bigot if you don't call me skinny. Like, this is nonsense. What society and life is society recognizes us based on the image that we portray. So if I'm a jerk, people in society think I'm a jerk. I don't get to say, you're not allowed to view me as a jerk. I'm sorry. Like, that's just the way it is. And so the irony of her in that situation saying, you're a fascist, but you have to call me a woman. Why do you get to label me, your pejorative term, but I have to call you, it's offensive if I don't call you a pronoun.
Right.
It makes no sense.
You see that pattern throughout a lot of this where it's a one-way street.
Right.
Like they talk about wanting to have a conversation when I don't know if they know what a conversation is because.
Well, Eric Holder said this. Remember, Eric Holder said this nation's too cowardly to have a conversation about race.
Yeah.
No, we're not. I talk about it all the time. I've talked to Eric Holder today, right now. He could call in and I would talk to him. What Eric Holder really means is this country won't agree with me on what I think about race, and therefore I'm going to call them cowards. So they have to define the terms, and you have to agree with their definition of the terms before they're willing to have a good faith discussion of you. This was, so that there's this Twitch streamer, I don't know if you've ran into him, his name's Prime K's. I debated him on my channel about Black Lives Matter. And he actually seems like a decent guy. He's a communist, whatever, but he seems like a decent guy. He did one of these 8-people panel debates. I hate them because people are talking over each other. It's just too hard to moderate. Anyways, he kept stepping on my toes. So people would go off and they'd say anything. Oh, you know, Trump, he made fun of a mentally challenged reporter, and Trump's a fascist, and Trump's a Nazi, and it had nothing to do with the topic. And then I would respond, and he'd say, now, Rob, that's not the topic. And so finally, the last question was, is Trump a fascist? And I listened. For 30 minutes, I didn't talk. I sit there and listened to everyone on the panel. 6 people went before me. One person was like, I don't think he's a fascist, but I'm not going to say anything else. So 6 people I watched go, he's a fascist because he waves the American flag. He's a fascist because he talks about America being the greatest country. He's a fascist because he talks to the military. And so I'm just writing everything down. I'm like, okay. So finally it's my turn to speak. And I was like, here's everything you said. I want to go through the list one by one so people could get a picture of what the left calls fascist. Oh, you like the military? You're a fascist. And I got cut off in the middle of it. Prime says, oh, you know, actually, that you're going off track. And I was like, you know what? I'm leaving. I'm leaving the panel. Yeah. And I did. And they were all like, oh, you know, you chickened out or whatever. And I was like, no, I have nothing left to say. It's now just going to be a shouting match where I'm going to be like, well, you're not letting me talk. So I was like, instead of that, I'll just gracefully leave. And that'll be the end of it. But that's what's going on. I said, what do you want this debate to be? We all have to agree that Trump's a fascist? That's what you want the debate to be? Like, what kind of debate is that? That's not a debate at all. And I said, you know, there we go. I had to delete someone from DLive there.
You're good.
But you know what I mean? So they want the debate to be, well, Trump's a fascist, but is it a big deal? And I'm like, no, he's not a fascist. Oh, that's not the topic. The topic is Trump is a fascist. So they define the term. And by the way, get used to it because that's what this debate's going to be next week.
I know. You know, and I'm looking. I have one tonight. I'm debating on there tonight.
Yeah, good
with
luck.
Them over media bias, Trump getting a SCOTUS pick, and something else. But yeah, it'll be my first time on there. I'm a little nervous, but I'll have a couple brewskis before I go.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Just remember that. Like, here's advice that I need to follow more. Just remember this. They're going to wildly get off topic, and they're going to do things like go ahead, say something. I'll show you what you're going to deal with tonight. Just say anything about Trump and the SCOTUS pick.
Oh, yeah, I'll say that, well, the Republicans aren't hypocrites because...
What a fucking dick! Look at this fucking dick here, man! Fucking cocksucker fucking dick! That's it. That's what you'll deal with tonight. Now, sorry, by the way, to my audience, I don't normally swear. That's literally how they treat us when we go on these things. And you're just like...
It's true. It happened in Discord when I just went to the chat for like 15 minutes like we got onto something, and like within just a couple minutes, man, they were setting upon me due to my age.
Yeah.
Like it was weird. I'm like, really?
They proved your point, by the way. Like for example, we had a conversation about toxic masculinity. And it's like, well, define toxic masculinity. Well, there are all these actions like being rude and domineering and dominating the conversation. And so for 40 minutes, I sit there and don't talk while they interrupt me, call me names, and shout at me. I was like, if these are the characteristics that you think are toxic, why are you engaged in them?
They never apply their standards to themselves. They just don't. Like, I don't know what it is. They just it's like they have this one-track mind where they're just trying to stymie anything you're saying. They don't have necessarily good arguments, which is why they got their list of labels and they got all these tactics that you're talking about. I mean, that's what it comes down to, because and they'll say, "Oh, no, you don't. Have you read this book?" And you know, and that's the way it goes. So you don't really know what socialism is or Marxism.
Yeah, it's nonsense. And they'll just deny things that are in reality. Like, I have this person, he might be watching now, which he seems like a decent person, but he has his own channel, only a couple followers. By the way, I'm not denigrating him for that. I don't have many followers. But he has been on me since I did a video about those 2 cops that were shot in Compton, and then the Black Lives Matter people that showed up at the hospital and were saying, we hope these pigs die. He's been on me, and it's like, well, it was only a handful of people and proved they were Black Lives Matter. And so I've been, like on 5 of my videos that have nothing to do with that, he keeps commenting on the thread. So I was like, dude, if you want to come on and debate about it, that's fine. I was like, but it was a group, they say in the video, they're from a group called Africa Town Coalition. And if you go to their website, they don't call themselves Black Lives Matter, but they're all about all cops are bastards, defund the police. Basically the agenda of Black Lives Matter. And he just keeps bringing, where's the proof? Where's the proof? Where's the proof? And I'm like, finally, I don't know what more to do. Like, here's the gentleman on his YouTube page saying, I'm from Africa Town Coalition, blah, blah, blah. And that's not proof to you. And we have to pretend, like, it's like you're not living in reality. Do you think those were Trump supporters? Do you think that those were police supporters saying, we hope these cops die?
Right.
I mean,
well, many of them are convinced that it's white supremacists committing all the riots and everything. You see it a lot on Twitter where they're like, oh, well, those are white supremacists. And I feel like a lot of people know that's bull, but they know they'll just put it out there just because they know it works on some people. And, you know, they're just trolling basically. But
well, and to get back to this debate we're going to have on Russia, here's what we have to fight against. And I could talk to you more specific about actual debates I've had on this. The problem is because all of these institutions and the experts are so political at this point, they're always able to point to like Chris Wray and say, well, Chris Wray says Antifa's not a terrorist group. Chris Wray says it's Republicans and white supremacists. And so then I have to argue again. They'll always be able to say, well, you're against the experts, Rob. You're against the experts. The health experts, Dr. Fauci and the CDC, say that if you go to church, you spread COVID. If you go to a Trump rally, you spread COVID. But if you go out with 100,000 of your friends and riot and loot, you don't spread COVID. And
you get the BLM signs, you're good.
Right. And so then I have to argue, and they're always able to be like, oh, this guy's anti-experts. You're not the expert. They're the expert. See, this article. And if you could see, so that's why I think it's important, by the way, this Russia coup argument, this is why it's so important that people understand. The experts are corrupt. And they're corrupt I'm not saying all experts are always corrupt, but there's so much politicization in these field of experts at this point, you should never take what they say at face value. And we've lost the culture war and allowed these institutions to become so politicized. So it's stupid things that you have to argue with this. Well, according to documents that I read, illegal immigrants actually commit far fewer crimes than domestic citizens. Really? Because the fact that they're illegals at crime, that means 100% of them committed a crime.
Right. I know. I always throw it out. I was like, well, they are here illegally, you know. They literally came into the country committing a crime. That was their intro to America was. And most of these people have to get stolen social security numbers and shit, stolen and fake IDs. There's all kinds of crimes that they're committing. That's
a great point that I was just going to make. Have you ever had your identity stolen? That is not a victimless crime. That sucks hard. And it could actually cost you your home. It could cost you all sorts of, working your entire life for savings. All of that could be given up because your identity was stolen. A huge portion of these people steal identities. But we have to pretend, and it's just stupid stuff like this, like climate change. I have to pretend that when Al Gore told me that by now Florida would be underwater, well, but I still have to take him seriously. And the people that said, I still have to take them seriously. And it's like, at some point you have to say, that's why I said my channel, I don't care what your credentials are. You could show me that you went to the most prestigious medical university in the world. If your argument is, if you go outdoor to a Trump rally, you get COVID. If you go outdoor to a Black Lives Matter rally, you don't. You're full of shit. That's it. I don't care your credentials.
Yeah, you literally see them making that argument, like on CNN. I don't know if you saw it, like maybe a week or two ago, and the guy literally made that argument. Oh well, the fight against systemic racism and racial justice, whatever the hell that is. Like I love how they never define. These are all like these intersectionality Marxist terms that they just throw out there as if it's 100%. It's like you were saying earlier. Like they'll just start from this position that their perspective is the starting point. Like there's no questioning it. It's just there's no debating it. The debate's over. They hate debate. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to like interrupt you there.
No, that's fine. Like here's a good example, and I know you covered this because I saw some of your videos. Kids in cages. They'll put out a picture of a kid in cage and be like, Trump's a monster. Oh, actually, that picture's from Obama. Oh, our bad. Oh, so the kid doesn't matter now. Obama putting him in the cage, you don't care about the kid. But if it was Trump, all of a sudden you cared. And this is the best way to go after these people, right? Because what they'll do is, in this debate, so just be aware, and I know you're aware of this, what they'll do is they'll pretend that even talking to a Russian, like you want to talk, they constantly say Trump and his supporters are xenophobic. They'll say that anyone who talks to a Russian who is a Trump supporter is possibly engaged in espionage against the United States. You can't get more xenophobic or racist than that.
It's really insane. Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's the point they'll make. And then when you say, okay, if you believe that, what do you think, for example, about Hunter Biden getting $3.5 million from a Moscow mayor? A Moscow mayor's wife. What do you think about that? Oh, that's different. What do you think about Bill Clinton personally meeting with Vladimir Putin, receiving $500,000 check from a Russian-owned bank a week later, and then the Uranium One deal being signed a week after that? Do you think that that's skeptical? That's Putin himself. That was Bill Clinton meeting with Putin himself. Do you think that warrants an investigation? And every time they'll come up with a reason why. Well, when my side does it, it's okay. We don't do that. We apply consistent standards. I don't give a shit that Bill Clinton met with Putin. I don't. Now, should Uranium One be investigated? Yes, but for different reasons. All I'm saying is equal treatment. You tore Trump's life upside down. You raided his lawyers in the middle of the night. Let's do it to the Democrats. Hell, let's do it to everyone in Washington. I'm for it.
Yeah, that's mostly my beef with the media. It's like I have no problem with the media being super hard on politicians. I have no problem with that. That's the way it should be. But it's just the fact that we can see clearly that they're not at all interested in doing it to their side, the side that they are a part of or identify with. They don't do it to them, and so it comes off looking like a completely corrupt system that's two-tiered,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's the huge, again, I don't have a problem with people that are consistent on this. So if the media wants to be this hard on Trump, I think it's to the point of ridiculousness, how many scoops of ice cream, shit like that. But that's fine if you want to be that hard, as long as you do it to the next person.
Which they won't.
Right, so the same media that couldn't take, it's just so transparent. They were hyperventilating for 4 years about, oh my God, did Trump or his family talk to Russians? Now we have definitive proof that Hunter Biden got $3.5 million from a Russian mayor's wife. They won't ask him one question. Oh, well, it's not important.
Oh, yeah, what did Joe Biden say when he was asked about, we don't talk about business dealings? And then he was found to be a liar about that like a week later or something, a couple days later. And that's, where's Jake Tapper coming up, or Don Lemon? Oh, we dug up this audio of Joe Biden saying he hadn't talked to him, and we found out later he was lying, and now this is coming out. So what's the deal with this? They won't do that, obviously, because they've convinced themselves that Trump is an existential threat Russian agent who's going to destroy democracy, while they are telling themselves that anything goes to stop that, while they are the ones doing all these things.
Right. And it's like the things that I saw polling, which I'll grant you, polling's garbage 90% of the time. Statistics are garbage 90% of the time. How about that too? But take it for what it's worth. I saw polling that said 50% of registered Democrats polled still believe the allegations in the Steele dossier. They think that Trump is an asset of Putin, despite the fact that it's been definitively debunked. I had someone just on my show last night saying, but what if all this is true, why was Trump so easy on Russia? Well, one, even if he was, who cares, right? Like, Jimmy Carter was easy. Like, he wanted a more peaceful foreign policy. Does that prove he was a terrorist for all of these countries? No. Maybe Trump just didn't want to, push us to nuclear war with a nuclear-armed superpower. Yeah, but Trump's the xenophobe, right? Oh, Trump's clearly guilty by not nuking Russia. And then the reality is the exact opposite of what they say. Actually, Trump's been harder on Russia than any president since the Cold War. With sanctions, with upping domestic oil production, which directly hurt Russia, with increasing the NATO alliance in the budget, with increasing troops around there. Things, by the way, a lot of which I criticized Trump for. But it turns out the reality is the exact opposite of what these Democrats believe.
Right.
And it's because
just to add to that, giving Ukraine Javelin missiles, I realized that they're not actively deployed at the moment, but they don't need to be. Right now, they're training on them. They're getting used to using them, and Russia knows they're there and can be used. And that is a huge deterrent for Russia, because they know now if they roll armor in there to try and take more territory like they did before, rolling in those APC carriers and shit, they're going to get blown away and they're going to lose lots of armor. So that's huge. I mean, that's gigantic.
But you talk to your average Democrat friend and it's, oh, Trump's sending missiles to Russia. Trump's killing Russia's enemies. It's like, no, it's the exact opposite of the truth.
Oh, and didn't the bounty thing turn out to be complete bonk? That turned out to be nothing. Like, and I love how it's typical drive-by media shit. They put out this story, they pump it up, and then it turns out to be fuck. And then they don't talk about it anymore, but you don't hear about it. They don't correct it. Or maybe you'll find, an internet story on CNN that corrects it. But you're not going to see Don Lemon or Jake Tapper talking about it for days on end, or even 10 minutes or a minute.
Well, another example of their corruption. Remember when the media and every Democrat you knew was chanting, "It's Mueller time! Bob Mueller, he's beyond reproach. He's going to bring down... I got my Mueller votive candle here that I'm going to light when Mueller sends Don Jr. to prison for the rest of his life." You remember that? This guy was sharp as a tack. He was going to bring down the entire Trump empire. Remember that? Then the guy, you see him testify, you're like, holy cow, this guy doesn't even know he doesn't even know who Fusion GPS is, right? Yeah. Now, Andrew Weissman, who was Mueller's deputy, remember, so the criticisms from people like me and you during Mueller's investigation was, how come every deputy that he had was a Democrat? Many of which had worked for the Clinton Foundation as lawyers before, many of which had donated to Clinton's team, that we had texts talking about how they wanted Hillary to win. But we were told it didn't matter that the people underneath Mueller were all Democrats because Mueller was beyond reproach. He was reigning in that investigation. He was in charge. Now, what's Andrew Weissman, who, by the way, attended Hillary's election night party? What's he out there saying today? Oh, Mueller was a boob. We actually would have had them if it wasn't for Mueller's incompetence. Trump did collude with Russia. We're going to hear this. They're going to be citing Andrew Weissman in this debate. And it's like, so everything you just told us for 3 years about Bob Mueller being the Terminator and the sharpest man in Washington, beyond reproach, that's all I know. Now you're 100% just at the flip of a hat. Oh, well, now he was a boob that was incompetent. And Andrew Weissman, who we knew was partisan, and you said, well, it doesn't matter he's partisan because Bob Mueller's reining him in. Now we have to trust Weissman. I mean, how can you take these people seriously?
Yeah. Oh, that's just like Bolton. Bolton was the, devil incarnate during the Bush administration. And then they love him all of a sudden because he becomes an enemy of the Trump administration. And then he backs up Trump's story about not attacking veterans in World War I dead veterans. Remember that? Yep. And then suddenly Bolton doesn't matter again. And yeah, isn't it weird, just something a little off topic here, how Democrats, and maybe it happens a little bit on the Republican side. I won't say it doesn't happen, but it seems way more prevalent on the left, where they almost like worship these politicians, and like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, like they like worship her like she's a religious deity or something. It's really weird. Well, and you see that a lot with a lot. I mean, over
Obama was the same thing.
Right.
It was like
Yeah, the media regularly would take photographs of Obama to where it looked like he had a halo, whether it be like the sun or the presidential seal. But there's if you look it up, there's so many throughout the media that just over the course of 8 years where they did that. But yeah. Oh yeah, it's crazy. And look, let's take Obama for a minute. I had a friend who was on the debate team with me that was black. When was Obama elected first? 2008. So yeah, when Obama got elected, look, I despise focusing on skin color, I do. However, let me be honest for a minute. If you grew up in the civil rights era, or your mother did, or your father, that had to be a special moment.
right? To see someone who was black. I would never vote for someone because of their skin color, but I don't begrudge people saying, wow, look how far we've come as a country. Now we have a black man that's president. That's fine. The same with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, second woman on the Supreme Court. That's cool. As long as you're not putting her on the court because she's a woman, I don't mind looking at the historic nature of that. And despite the fact I despise Ruth Bader Ginsburg's decisions and her politics, she achieved a lot. She was successful as a person. So I don't mind looking and saying, hey, that's someone worth celebrating. But she's not a saint. She's not someone worth worshiping. I like Donald Trump. If Donald Trump passes away 10 years from now, I'm not going to be like, oh my goodness, my life it's being... And I had a friend, I'll tell you this story. I had a friend who's not very political, but we like play video games and stuff some. And he tells me the other day, I think I'll be fine telling this. I won't say a name, but he's like, yeah, so I was out at having a few beers with some friends, and he's like, all of a sudden, the one tangential friend of his comes in and goes, oh my God, Ruth Bader Ginsburg just passed away. And he's sitting there with his hands in his head, with tears in his eyes, and everyone's just looking at each other like, yeah, I guess that's a bummer. Did you know her? What's going on? And and he's like, so this went on for hours, and then a new person showed up. And this person that's real emotional is like, did you hear Ruth Bader Ginsburg died? And the new person's like, who the fuck is that? And it's just he was like, you would have thought it was his mother. And look, it would be different if it happened. Heck, we were just talking before we came on. I don't know if this is true, so no one take this at face value. It looks as if Ron Paul may have had a stroke on camera today.
Yeah, they were talking about it in chat.
Yeah, so that may have happened. That sucks. But I'm not sitting here like, oh my God. And that's my favorite politician of all time. And I'm not sitting here like, I don't know how I'll do anything today. It's terrible, but I don't worship the man. And there is something unhealthy. And I've seen some of it with Trump, Trump supporters that are way too into Trump. Trump will save everything. I don't even have to go to work anymore. Trump will take, no. But yeah, it's certainly the media and the Democrats and Hollywood and stuff. They have this idolization of people that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, they definitely do. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, someone was saying, did you read this story? Someone was saying in chat about the woman who wrote the article that was like, since Ginsburg died, I became a Satanist.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Satan, the Church of Satan Twitter was like, we don't endorse this. This is clearly political garbage. It's like, dude, when your party's rejected by the Satanists, you might want to review, what you're all about.
Right, yeah. Did you see the people dressing up as Ruth Bader Ginsburg and jogging? And
yeah.
Some people were suggesting NFL come out with crochet necks on their uniforms.
Yep, it's crazy. I mean, look, just ask someone. I've asked people on Facebook. I've been trying to stop posting political stuff on Facebook because it was causing problems within my family. But just ask someone on there when they're putting all these memes about, oh, it's going to be the Handmaid's Tale now that Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dead. Women will be sexually subjugated to men. It's like, really, can you, what decision was it that she ruled on that would have been the Handmaid's Tale if she ruled the opposite way? Can you give me the name of that decision? What are some of their key things? Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I'm sorry, Rob.
Oh, no.
I guess in her lower court hearings, she's been very explicit that the law is the law, when she's asked about this. So, I mean, she's probably going to end up being kind of like, what's his face that's in there, who's been a lot more liberal than, we thought he was going to be.
Oh, Roberts. Oh, you're talking about Amy Barron Cohen.
Yeah.
Look, I'll be honest. I think it's a shame that the Supreme Court's so important. Basically, we're supposed to have 3 co-equal branches of government, and Congress is irrelevant totally. And it's just the president and the court now. And it's disgusting. What conservatives should be pushing for is taking back power from the court. Yes, it's important to have conservative judges, but if the court wasn't so powerful, then it wouldn't be so important. And that's why you see the Democrats freaking out, because they know that they need an activist court to pass their agenda, because no one buys their crap. So they have to push it all through the courts. And what conservatives should be doing is taking back power away from those courts. What does Congress do now? You want to know what my congressman, noted longest running Republican in Pennsylvania, in my district, you know what his big issue is? He's pushing to get whole milk back in the local public schools because the farmers make more money off whole milk than 2% milk. Right. It's meanwhile, the schools aren't opening up. Any comment on the fact that they're saying it's a racist country? Oh, you can't be bothered to comment on that. You're too focused on whole milk. You know, it's like, just have a seat. Honest to God, here's a platform. We'll see if I could get, if people agree with this. Here's an idea I have. Congress is so worthless. What is it? 535 of them? I forget the exact number. Here's what we do. Get rid of every single one of them and give the positions to homeless people. Because at least that's 535 people that need the money. There you go. Here's $100,000. Now sit back and do nothing. Because that's what Congress is doing anyways. At least we won't have to see Nancy Pelosi's gob on television spewing lies and hatred for the United States. We're literally in a system where homeless people on the street, if they dominated Congress, we'd have a more effective country than the career politicians that we have there.
They just to read some Stanton High here from my Discord. Yeah. He said Ron Paul's been hospitalized. So I guess that is real. Wow, that's terrible. It looked bad. It did. And my thoughts go out to him and his family. That's crazy. Yeah, the video is disturbing. It's sad to see that happen to him. Yeah. And somebody asked, let me see here real quick. Midnight Joker asked, are you looking at what's being suggested by globalists with the climate lockdown? And yeah, I believe I saw that with Prince Charles maybe saying something recently that was really kind of crazy. Is that what, I think that's what he's talking about? Yes. And I could show you, I was on, you used to be on Above Top Secret. For those of you who don't know, Above Top Secret was a conspiracy theory blog, but then it basically became politics. There were conservatives on there that I was debating like crazy. At the beginning of the lockdowns that were like, because Trump was supporting the lockdowns. And so there's a lot of people, if Trump says it, then it must be true. And I was like, no, Trump's wrong about these lockdowns. And I was debating these constitutional conservatives, that are like for the lockdown all of a sudden. And what I said to them was, you are giving the blueprint. Day one that a Democrat gets power, they're going to say, now we need to lock down about climate change. And I was told, no, they'll never say it, Yeah. Sorry, someone told me to say potato. I just wanted to say was that going to be some code? By the way, you want to hear something totally irrelevant off topic that I thought was funny? Did you see the pictures of, I think it was it Biden? Yeah. The pictures of Biden that was repeatedly doing this. By the way, Demon Mama, when I was debating her the other day, did this several times. Did everybody see this? That's the OK symbol. I don't have a problem with it. I did. But to the left, that's a white supremacy symbol. So where are the investigations into Joe Biden giving white supremacy symbols? Isn't it funny? Like, that's what we were talking about earlier, like the double standards they have. You remember when Make America Great Again was a dog whistle to racism? Until we found that Bill Clinton in '94 had campaign ads that said Make America Great Again. And they were like, oh, well, Bill Clinton's not a racist. So clearly that's not racist for him to say that. Right. Right. That's like, I love Rick Rick Wilson. Oh, it's the worst. The deranged never Trumper. He was, calling to cancel people who had, Confederate flags. He was railing about lockdown. And then somebody found a picture of his cooler of him on his boat, and he had a cooler that had a Confederate flag on. And I think he and his wife dismissed it by saying it was his son's or something. But it's like, cancel him. But yet, no, the standards won't apply to you because you're just using it as a weapon. I don't remember what her name was, but there was a I think she was a Vice News reporter, was on CNN, and she straight up said that she's like, oh, we in the media, we use race as a political weapon. And I actually tweeted her. I'm like, were you ever on CNN after this? Because I don't think she was. But she said that, and it's like, yeah, we know. It's obvious. Well, that's what it's like. You use it in as far as it helps you. That's like the Black Lives Matter thing, and that's what it's all about. It's like, it's about using specific certain Black lives for the purposes of pushing a political agenda. And by the way, if you look on Black Lives Matter website, I thought this had been scrubbed, but it's not. Where they say that Black Lives Matter is an ideological political wake-up call or something like that, or intervention. It says an ideological political intervention is what they are. And so it's like, that's why they don't care about the vast majority of Black lives that are lost at the hands of other Black people through gang violence or whatever, because that doesn't advance their political agenda. But they do care about those. And that's also why they don't care. That's why nobody knows the name of the two white people that were killed in Houston from a no-knock warrant, an illegal no-knock warrant that two Black officers lied to get. And I think they have been charged now, although I don't know I haven't really followed it up, but that's not a national news story. Nobody knows their names. And that's why, because the media uses it just like BLM does. It's like they all have intersecting interests there, and so that's why we're seeing it.
Well, and it's like, look, like take Breonna Taylor. You could do the same with George Floyd, but let's take that specific. This, what you're talking about leads to this. There are people convinced, millions of people in this country are convinced that Breonna Taylor was killed for being black. Have you seen one piece of evidence like, even if you think that what the cops did was illegal, which to me, we were misled the entire time. It wasn't a no-knock warrant. And we have a witness that was a neighbor that said, I heard them knocking and announcing they were police. We know that her boyfriend shot at the police. What do you expect to happen? Like, for example, let's say it's you. Let's say it's you, DroneTech. Let's say that someone, you, God forbid, have to use a firearm to defend yourself, right? Someone's shooting at you. You get shot in the shoulder and you shoot back. And the bullet misses and hits a bystander and they die. Now, maybe there's some sort of negligence that you could be charged with, but clearly you didn't commit murder, right? Like, particularly if it was the significant other of the person shooting at you. You just returned fire and tragically it hit a bystander. That's not murder. And everybody knows that. But even if you have a problem with that, where does the race factor into any of this?
Exactly.
It's the same with the George Floyd thing. I mean, this guy, I agree that Derek Chauvin, even if Floyd was probably going to die of a fentanyl overdose regardless, I still think what Derek Chauvin did was uncalled for, and he should be charged with abuse of power. I don't know what the criminal code for that is or how long the punishment. I don't know. But it's the biggest story in the nation for what, 5 months now, 6 months going? There hasn't been one story of them finding a tweet of Derek Chauvin using the N-word, one story of a friend saying, I heard him say mean things about black people. Nothing. And if you had that story, I'm sure CNN would pay you $50,000 if you had Facebook posts or, even just a story. I was at a party with Derek Chauvin and he said he doesn't care for black people. That you would be a hero. You'd be a national hero. This must prove that it was racism. Yet that hasn't came out. So, this is exactly what you're talking about. They're just like, clearly it has to do with race. What are you talking about?
Right, and that's what we were talking about that earlier, how they love to leave context and specific details out of everything, and they do it here too. And like I was talking about, I think a couple of streams ago, a Discord chat, but on Twitter, CBS News and a couple other ones had tweeted out this thing saying 139 black people killed by police this year so far. And it's like, that's all it was. And it was just this list of names. It was like a wall of names. Like that, just the way it had been constructed, the web page and the tweet highly implied that these people were all murdered because they were black. And the wall of names reminded me of like the Vietnam War Memorial or something. Right. It was like all these, and it's like, okay, well, why were these people shot? You don't talk about any of those details. Every single one of these might have been justified. We don't know. How have you eliminated every factor involved in every one of these shootings to conclude that it was because they were black? And also, how many white people have been shot this year? How many Hispanic people? Why don't you talk about that? Like, it's like, and then they'll say, oh, well, because black people are shot at disproportionate rates. It's like, okay, fine. That may be true, but you should still put out that information to show some context about what's going on. And then when they bring up that argument, you can talk about, oh, well, a lot of these shootings are happening in specific areas and certain areas, and a lot of them are happening because the person shot at them or fought the police. So it's just another one of those things that's tearing this country apart needlessly, where they could be bringing people together, but they purposely don't.
Totally agree. And look, like the selective application of the motivation, like I don't understand. Like, it's the same thing when you could imply motivations of stuff without evidence. It allows you to convince people to do all sorts of heinous things. So now you feel justified throwing a Molotov cocktail at people, or beating a Trump supporter, or shooting a security guard over a television like David Dorn was shot, right? You feel justified because you were told by the media that the motivation for every time a tragedy happens is this country hates black people, right? And the problem,
if anything happens to them personally, it's because they're black.
That's right. Now, how could you know the motivation, right? And then it leads to, you're able to then ignore reality. So, for example, let's take Christopher Wray's comment that white nationalism's the real problem with domestic terrorism in this country. And I had someone cite me a statistic the other day that said, since 1994, white nationalists have killed 324 people. Okay.
I'm guessing most of that was Timothy McVeigh, but yeah.
Well, right. And there's also, they compile stats. I don't know if they included that, but like they include if there's a radical white racist group in prison and they kill a person of color, they consider that right-wing terrorism. But
right, prison violence is the majority of it.
Right, but if a radical black supremacist kills a white person, that's not considered black terrorism, right? So what they do is, it's the motivation. It's just like the idea of a hate crime. Terrorism, hate crime, right? Oh, the reason. So now we're not focused on the fact that you were murdered. We're focused on the reason you were murdered, right? And so what we end up happening is, we live in a society where we have convinced millions of people that black people are being hunted down by cops and white people and murdered, when the reality is, the cold hard facts are, an individual black is 47 times more likely to commit a violent crime against a white person than vice versa. That's right. Not even close. That's appalling. Now,
right.
Is that all black people? No. Should you judge your black neighbor because of that? Absolutely not. But the stats are the stats. The facts are the facts. And that's turned on its head. We believe the exact opposite of that because we focus on mind reading. What was the motivation for these people? And all it takes, once you accept that, oh, that's what's important, not the actual deaths, not the murders, but the motivations behind it, well, then it's a stone's throw away from a political actor to say, we just assume every time a white person kills a black person, it's because of their race, but every time a black person kills a white person, it has nothing to do with race.
Right.
And so
we're already there.
Yeah, that's exactly where we're at. And so you get in these ridiculous debates. And here's a point I would argue this point. It's something that I've argued so many times. I've never got an answer remotely close to anyone on the left why this makes sense. We're told that the fact that this is what's the biggest proof? If I could ask you this, DroneTech, what would you say is the biggest proof that we live in a racist country? What are Black Lives Matter focused on?
What do you mean?
Like, what they isolate a problem. What is it that they're talking about? What are they protesting against?
Systemic racism or whatever.
Through the police, right?
Right.
And their proof is, well, it's the police, and look at how many blacks are shot disproportionately, and blacks get stopped more by the cops and stuff. So I'm going to pull number. I don't have the data in front of me, but it's something like this. It is true. Now, there could be reasons behind this, but it is true that blacks are something like 11% more likely to be pulled over on average. They're like 11% more likely to get a longer prison sentence, to be found guilty, etc. All of the metrics we would use. So they say that's the one issue. Focusing on law enforcement. Because blacks get longer sentences and are disproportionately affected, that proves we have a racist country. Okay, fine. If that's true, what if I were to tell you, if we look at another group, that we could see a group that is actually far more disproportionately affected by the criminal justice system? And you know what that group is? Men.
Yeah.
If you take the difference between blacks and whites and then compare it the difference between men and women, men are like 30% more likely to be pulled over, 30% more likely to be convicted, something like 80% more likely to be shot by the police. So does that prove that we live in a sexist society against men?
Right. And you know what's funny is it cracks me up when you use this argument, and the people you're debating always misconstrue it every time. It's like they don't understand the point you're making. You're making the point that you're using their logic in the case of men in prison, and so you're just using but they think that you're trying to deflect from the conversation and make it about men are being discriminated against.
Right.
It's so hilarious. Like, do you not see what he's doing?
Yep.
He's just you're trying to demonstrate absurdity by being absurd.
Right. And when you say this, their gut reaction always is like, well, men commit more crimes.
Right. I know. It's like, yeah, we know.
Like, yes, that's exactly right. Right. And like the best I've had someone be like, okay, you're right. I see what you're saying. So then you would say blacks commit more crimes. It's like, yeah, exactly. And they're like, but there's reasons that blacks commit more crime. Fair enough. That's a discussion worth having. I think that's where we need to go.
They always think that we're trying to say that blacks are inherently like criminals, and we're not saying that. That's not at all.
Right.
In fact, I think you and I both know that. But I know lots of black people. None of them are like that. They're doing great in life, by the way. They're doing, just as good as anybody else around me is doing. And so it's like, that's why I talk about it's really specific areas where this is happening. And real quick, Jennifer gave me a super tweet a while ago, and I just wanted to read her tweet.
Sure.
She said, your videos just turned my 78-year-old lifelong Democrat father into an instant Trumper.
Yeah!
Jennifer.
It's great.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
No, that's great. But yeah, I mean...
You're right. You're right about all that.
I mean, the point of this is, like, Again, there's all kinds of things we can talk about. The stats are skewed because actually, I would love to see better data on what does crime statistics look like for a black person in a rural neighborhood or a suburban neighborhood. Because what we see is it's not the skin color as much as it is certain communities, inner city communities that happen to be predominantly lived in by, and it's not even all black people, it's predominantly young black men, right? So it's like 4% of the population committing more than 50% of the homicides. Now, if your argument is, but wait a minute, there's a reason. Maybe it's the war on drugs. Maybe it's systemic poverty. We can have all those discussions. However, that's a concession that the problem isn't racist policing, right? Because you can't blame because what you've just admitted is, you're right, black people are committing a disproportional amount of crime. Therefore, you would expect there to be a disproportional amount of violence to and from the police community, from that community.
Seems like that might be a piece of the puzzle.
Right. So then your criticism's not with the cops. Your criticism's with all these other things. The politicians that made the war on drugs, maybe, or the Democratic mayors that leave these cities be crap holes, right? But it's not the police. The police are doing exactly what's expected. Now, are there individual police officers that could be terrible? Sure. And when that happens, we should do more to charge them. Totally agree with that. But your entire movement then is built on a lie. And they know it. They know that it is. And you can't solve a problem if you don't correctly identify the problem. And, I go ahead.
No, I was just going to say another piece of the puzzle here, like we were talking about, is that, and it's funny, I found a Washington, but you were talking about stats and needing to get more stats. It's funny because anybody who's gotten into this topic and is genuinely interested, you start digging for stats because you're like, I wonder what this specific stat is. I wonder what this specific, like for instance, like I wonder what the stat is for people biracial group who fight the police when they're being detained. How many of them actually violently fight the police, right? And I would love to see that, but I could not find any stats on that. And also, when you talk about like mass shooting stats, they bring that up a lot. Oh, white males are most likely. Well, that's only if you eliminate all the gang-related mass shootings, which they do. If you Google it, there's a Chicago Tribune article about how they don't count gang stats, and they give some contrived, really ridiculous logic for doing that. And so when it comes to actually like black males shooting police, there's actually a Washington Post fact check about it. And they're like, do black people shoot more police than anyone else? And there's this long article. It seems like a pretty cut and dry question, right? There's no need for this, but there's this huge long article, which is obviously like for someone to be reading it, just give up and go to the end or just read the headline and go. But their conclusion by the end is that it's something like, oh, well, last year it was 45 police shootings by black males and 50 of them by white males. And so white people actually shoot more police than black people. And so that was the conclusion. But it's like, and it's funny because earlier in the article, they used per capita breakdowns in order to debunk something. But then later at the end, they're completely ignored the per capita. And it's like, if black people have shot 45 police, that's significant that it's so close to white people, because you expect out of any group that you're going to have a certain amount of people who are just bad people are going to do shit like that. Right. But clearly there's a lot more of them in the black community. I'm not saying why that is. And there's lots of reasons for it, no doubt. But I'm just saying that is the fact. And so that article should have been the other way around, but they concluded that it wasn't.
They do this with like welfare as well, right? They'll be like, well, actually, more white people are on welfare than black people. Like, and it's like, but wait a minute, you keep conflating total number of people versus per capita, right? Like you interchange when you feel like it. But if we're being honest, we should.
With Corona.
Right, we should be looking at the per capita numbers. And I try to do that all the time, right? For example, if someone says, well, white people are shot more by cops than black people, I say, well, yeah, but we should look at per capita. Now, I argue that per capita, is it a coincidence that blacks are about 2.5 times more likely to commit violent crimes, and they're about 2.5 times more likely to be in violent altercations with the police? Do we really think that's a coincidence? Of course not. Right? Like, they just assert, they're like, what's race? And they do this with other stuff, like they just have
If you're genuinely interested in fixing it, wouldn't you want to address those things?
Right. Well, they're not, and that's the problem, right? And they'll just say like these things that like they've heard, it's been beaten to their head. Did you ever notice when you see Black Lives Matter or these like radical feminists or Antifa, they never have any unique thoughts. It's always just parroting slogans, right? That's all it is. They chant, They just, and it's like mindless drones. That's all they do. So if you have one of these conversations and you're like, well, you know, why are blacks commit more homicides? I guarantee within 10 seconds you'll hear this, redlining. It's like, yeah, okay, that was made illegal in like the late 60s. So your argument is that redlining still significantly affected. By the way, redlining also occurred to poor people of other colors, including poor white people. It still happens to this day, right? Like, if it's found, it's like anything else. Like, you can't discriminate based on race hiring, except in California, where the Democrats are trying to make that the law, that you can actually discriminate against people based on their race. But other than that, you can't do it. Show me the company that's discriminating based on race, and I'll fight them with you. But instead, you look at outcomes. You say, well, if 13% of that company's not black, that proves they're racist. No, it doesn't. That doesn't prove that at all. And it's constant, this conflation of just saying slogans, changing, like you were saying, per capita versus the total number of people. And it's all designed to paint this picture. I'm willing to admit, racism could play a part in why we see more poverty and violence in black community. It could play a part. But what I'm not willing, what I'm not willing to accept is that explains everything. It doesn't. And I say this all the time, I wish it would catch up. Black Lives Matter, that's why I'm against Black Lives Matter. Because lowercase Black Lives Matter is true. And I think that it's terrible that even the Republicans in this country have let these inner cities become the hellholes that they are. There needs to be something done. However, the organization Black Lives Matter, every suggestion they have would immediately harm this country. And the first people that would be harmed are black people in the inner city.
Yeah.
We're seeing it now. Defund the police. Homicides up 177% in all these places. So it's easy for your white liberal friend that's living in the suburbs and, you know, works at the local university to say, oh my goodness, Black Lives Matter, and how dare you talk about these riots? This is all, just for, you're just an immoral person if you're against this. It's like, yeah, it's easy for you to say that because you're not the one who has to live with the consequences of their advocacy. You're not the one who's likely to have homicide spike in your neighborhood and have your building that you've worked at your whole life burned down. So you're cool. And that's why, to me, it's like the white, and Malcolm X said this, the biggest opponent to the black community is the white liberal, right? Because they seek to speak for black people as if they're this monolithic babies that need to be coddled, and all of these white liberals are sitting in their, ivory towers lecturing the rest of us on how we have to allow a bunch of white people to go into inner city black communities and burn it down. I'm a racist because I'm against a bunch of white kids going into like inner city Atlanta and burning it down. That makes me the racist.
Right. Well, then you got these people coming on in the media and saying that people are scared of black people coming into their neighborhoods and burning it down, or that people perceive Antifa as a group of African Americans. It's like nobody thinks that. Everybody knows that these are like rich white kids and drug addict white people. Right. It's like mostly those two.
Yeah, and we're at the point where, I mean, I remember I did this video. I can't recall the exact document, but I think it was Flynn, when they released the 302 of Flynn. I think it was that. I could be wrong, though. But it said in black and white something. Like, they asked Flynn 3 times, like, do you recall this conversation? And he's like, no, I don't recall. Do you recall this? No, I don't recall. And then the 3rd time they asked him, he said, I could have had that conversation, but I don't remember. And I was like, that's damning. That's black and white, that what we were told about Flynn was wrong. Because he's literally saying, maybe that happened, but I don't remember. So that's not a lie, right? And I read that with left-wing friends of mine, and they were like, this is damning. That proves Flynn's a criminal. And I'm like, we're reading the exact same words on the paper. And you literally came to the opposite conclusion of me. How do you have a good faith discussion? We're going to find out in this debate with Russia. It's going to be the same thing. It's like, so with this debate with Demon Mama, you could watch the footage of Jay Danielson being executed. And he was executed in Portland by an Antifa person. You could hear them saying, here's one right here, pull it out.
Here's one right here, pop.
And they shoot him. And then they run away. Now, if it was, he pulled a gun on me and I felt necessary to defend myself, why didn't the cops find the gun? Why didn't Reinhold, the guy that shot him, stick around and talk to the police? That seems odd, doesn't it? If it was a justified shooting, why didn't they find any of that? Yet, me and you saw that, as did millions of other people. And people like Demon Alma and many like her looked at that and said, yeah, self-defense. Then they look at Rittenhouse, where the guy pulls a gun at him, where they're beating him, and they say, well, Rittenhouse is a murderer. And you're just like, how could any person remotely in reality look at those two situations and come to the exact opposite conclusion of the truth? And then once you realize that that's the type of person you're talking to, how can you talk about anything?
Right. The whole thing, dude, honestly. I mean, I'm going over, honestly, because he came and did on one of my Discord chats, so I'm returning the favor. But if it's at all like that, man, I'm not sticking around. I won't stick around because there's so much. It's like the thing I talked about earlier. And then you're right. I watched that entire debate. It was mind numbing because it's like you have to make all these arguments and have them backed up, and they have to be logical, but they can make all these sort of hypothetical, like esoteric arguments and shit. And like, and then just plead ignorance, like Destiny did so many times when you got him. And he'd be like, oh, I don't know about that.
Right.
I don't know about that. Oh, okay.
Well, like this demon moment debate, like, because it's just fresh in my head. When you debate me, if you were debating me, like, I might be wrong, but I'll be upfront with you. So if me and you were having a debate and you say, Rob, define fascism for me, or define terrorism for me, I would say, here's what my definition is, right? I wouldn't do this. Well, it's a tough question and blah, 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 for 7 minutes. And I'm just sitting there like, just give me it's not a gotcha. We need to have a couple of you cannot have a debate if there's not central things that you're agreeing on, right? Like, for example, if me and you are going to have a debate on should the United States increase corn subsidies, the very baseline we need to have that debate is we have to agree what corn subsidies are, right? If we don't, if you're like, well, corn subsidies are the government sending money to corn farmers to increase their production of corn, and I say, no, corn subsidies are spaceships that we're sending to Mars, how the hell can we have a debate? We can't. So they're unwilling to accept even the most basic definitions of terms. So I go into it. The question is Antifa a terrorist group? As soon as I say yes, you can't use the word terrorist, because that leads to people being hurt, and it's immoral for you to even use the word terrorist. You fascist! And I'm like, but wait a minute, you just called me a fascist. Well, that's okay. It's okay for me to call you a fascist. Well, can you define fascism? No. It's a hyper-nationalism, a context of fascism. Okay, can you define hyper-nationalism? Yeah, like thinking that America's the best, American exceptionalism. Okay, so people that say that America's the greatest country in the world are hyper-nationalists, which leads to fascism. Well, not necessarily. Okay, well, can you give me some example then? Well, how about the RNC, where there were flags everywhere and they were complaining about the teachers' unions? Okay, so having a bunch of flags and complaining about the teachers' unions makes you a hyper-nationalist, which means you might be a fascist. That's not what I said. It's like, holy shit! Yeah. How can I have a discussion with this?
You can't, because they, like, in the back of their minds, they know they're wrong, and the whole time, their entire tactic is just to hide the fact that they know they're wrong. It seems like, because there's no good faith at all, and you can't get an honest.
And then on top of that, which I like Dylan, and I think normally he's a good moderator, but he's just leaving her walk all over me. I'll say, what is fascism?
When you do what they do, and then when you do what they do, suddenly they have a problem.
Right. So I ask, what is fascism? She responds for 7 minutes. What is hypernationalism? She responds for 7 minutes. Then I try to say something and, wait a minute. And I'm just like, Dylan's not stepping in. So then I was like, okay, maybe it wasn't the most couth thing, but I was like, fine. If that's what the debate's going to be, I can play that game too. And the reality is then, like, I agree, Zach said earlier, it wasn't my best debate performance. I agree with that. But it's hard because you have these two things going on at once. This constant rudeness and not letting you talk, plus then the denial of reality. And so I have all of this planned out, how I wanted the direction the debate was going to go. I'm not saying that there weren't, like, solid points she could make, but it's this constant you have to slog through. And again, we're going to see this. I guarantee this will be the debate. You know, we will not,
everybody.
They will not agree with, they will not be able to give us a definition of collusion. They will not. I'm predicting it right now. They will not. Because, like, this is what we should do for this debate. Just be like, okay, I don't know what the exact wording of the topic is, but I was presented, and I think you were in the same way, DroneTech, that it was a question of, was the Russia investigation legitimate, or was it all just kind of like a political tech? So I don't know what the wording of the debate will be, but that's what we've been led to believe.
Is it a hoax? I think is what they say. Is it a hoax?
Right. Is it a right? And so, and they chose that language for a reason. Because they'll nitpick on, well, what's that mean, a hoax? It wasn't a hoax because there was people that talked to Russians, therefore it's not a hoax, right? That's the type of stuff that they'll want to do. And so they'll deflect from the idea that we could... So what we should do is, like, in fact, I'm going to talk to Dylan. I don't like that word. I refuse to debate if they say, was it a hoax? Because it wasn't a hoax. The just in a literal definition, yes, the Russian investigation was real. It wasn't a hoax. It was a coup, but it wasn't a hoax, right? The idea that Trump illegally conspired with Russians was a hoax, but the investigation wasn't a hoax. It was actually a very real, important thing. It was a coup. You know, so I'm going to make sure that we have that worded correctly. But anyways, just real quick to finish this point, what they'll do is they'll constantly be unwilling to, we need to get them to define right out of the gate. Give us your reason, without using the word Donald Trump, give us your reason for when it's okay to have wiretaps on a presidential candidate. What is it that, if this happens again 40 years from now, maybe 100 years from now, we're all dead. What do you think the criteria should be for when the FBI is allowed to start wiretapping a president or a presidential campaign?
Well, yeah, would it be okay if Republicans did tit for tat the exact same thing next election cycle? Are you all okay with that?
Right. And I've said that a million times. Like, for example, during the Mueller testimony, there was this big brouhaha that was made that Trump obstructed justice, right? That there was two parts. Yeah. There was part A, and Mueller definitively said there was no crime involving Trump or any of his team involving any Russians in the 2016 election. Then the second part was, we can't determine whether or not there was obstruction of justice. If you listen to the types of things Democrats said were obstruction of justice, it was things like Trump tweeting about not liking the Mueller investigation.
Right.
And my point was, I said, okay, that's fine, but when Bill Barr or Durham do an investigation, if you complain about it, didn't you just admit you've obstructed justice? Isn't it the same damn thing? Like, right. If your argument is Trump saying, I don't like Mueller, I want him out of here, that's obstruction of justice. Wouldn't that mean if Durham's looking into Democrats and the FBI and Jerry Nadler says, I don't like Durham, get him out of here, he just obstructed justice? According to their definition.
How about destroying their devices?
Oh.
And the Mueller team destroying, like, that's insane. And the excuse they gave, it just reminds me so much. I always go back to this, but the, what's-her-face's hearings when, I forget her name from the Obama administration, but they wanted to check her hard drives, and the director of the FBI was like, oh, well, we can't provide those. We had a hard drive crash. We can't provide that. It's like, what? No, it doesn't work that way. And then you look, and there was like this company that, was supposed to be like the gold standard for backups and stuff. And it's like, I went on their website and I'm like, apparently these guys suck. So if you're paying for them, then, you're wasting your money. But
and I had this real quick. I know we'll head out here, but on Above Top Secret. So one of the prominent liberals on there, who's actually smart, a good debater. I was having this debate.
Which one?
Introvert was his name. So this is,
I know him.
Yeah. So this was way back in the day, like 2017. I'm having this discussion with him, and we're having the same debate that we're going to have. And I was like, can you define for me what is your criteria for when we should be allowed to open this sort of investigation on a presidential candidate? And his almost verbatim response was, when you see that a campaign has so many shady connections to a hostile foreign power. I said, okay, that's it, right? Yep. I was like, here's a list of 15 connections that people on Hillary's team had with the same Russians. He says, that's different.
Yeah, it's always different when they do it, dude. It's like a program. It's like the base program.
And that's exactly what that's what this debate will be. Like, you define for us why this was considered a legitimate investigation. And, I think one of the points we need to hammer home is, what was the investigation? And I'll get the Rosenstein memo, but basically the Rosenstein memo outlines the number one thing that Mueller and the FBI was doing was investigating Russian interference. So if we could prove that both of those investigations intentionally did not investigate certain Russian interference, all the Russian interference that helped Hillary, they didn't get around to investigating the fact that a Russian spy was the source of the Steele dossier, and they knew that. They didn't investigate that. That's, to me, that's it. That's definitively the end of the question. It doesn't matter that you could say, but Konstantin Klimek talked to Manafort. It doesn't matter, because the investigation was about investigating all Russian interference. And if we could see that they intentionally allowed the biggest example of Russian interference to be left alone, that proves that the investigation was garbage. So I think that's their best tactic.
Well, it proves that, if nothing else, it was purely partisan.
Right.
I mean, because if they were actually concerned about that, obviously they would. But we've known this for a long time, man. I mean, going back to the beginning of all this, people were pointing out, oh, well, it looks like Hillary got this from Russian sources within the government. So, I mean, that's been known for forever. And, yeah, they've never cared about that. So, it's just like you debating Demon Mama. It's like, it doesn't matter that it's obvious and you're right. They'll never, ever, ever admit it. They're always going to have some excuse. some rationalization for why it's different when they do it.
And the last thing I'll say is, because a lot of people in my chat were asking this, and I bet you get this a lot too, why even debate these people? Well, two reasons. One, because there might be people that follow them that maybe a small chance that they'll be like, oh, I don't totally agree with DroneTech and Rob, but those are some interesting points that I never heard. It's the same reason that Trump agreed to do the town hall with, right? Because that's the first time that many CNN viewers got to see Trump's side of the story. Now, most of them still hate Trump and they're not listening, but some of them might be. So we have nothing to lose from debating these people. And the other thing is, so that you, the average person, gets to see how insane they are. Because otherwise, if you're not, you don't know what it's like in these bubbles. I mean, when I debated Destiny, right, who's, I would say, a far more moderate left-winger, when I debated him on the riots and COVID, at the end of that debate, I was just trying to get this one concession. So I said it in a very political way. I said, well, the conspiracy theorist in me thinks that mayors like de Blasio are allowing these riots to occur because they think it harms Trump. And he was like, of course! Of course that's what's happening. And it's like, do you hear what you're saying? Do you hear what you're defending? You're defending allowing riots in a city where people are dying and having their livelihoods burned to the ground because you don't like, you want to blame it on the other person. The Democrats are intentionally allowing this. Now, if I just went in there right out of the gate and was like, Destiny, I know you and the damn Democrats want these riots because it harms Trump. You think it harms Trump? He would have said, no way. But when you talk to him for 2 hours and you let them keep running their mouth, guess what? They'll eventually tell you the truth. And so when you see this debate, like when I debated Demon Mama, you could see all of a sudden, oh, what's fascism? You have a lot of American flags. Oh, no, what Reinhold did to Jay Danielson, that wasn't necessarily murder. This is shit that, like, you're supposed to believe. No one on the left believes this stuff. No one believes all cops are bastards until you go on these 8-panel debates and listen to 4 people say it over and over again.
Oh, God, yeah.
And so that's why we do it, you know.
Well, man, hey, this was a good convo, and like I was telling my audience, I will be debating over there at Dylan Burns' Twitch tonight. So check
I'll
me
try
out
to
over
make
there
it
debating.
Yeah,
it should be interesting. I'm a little nervous, but I think it'll be fine. I'm pretty confident in my position, at least on all those topics. I think so.
Just remember,
I thank you for.
Yeah, just remember this: like, don't watch their chat because they're all going to say you're a horrible Nazi. Blah 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 blah. You're going to be right, and don't buy their garbage. That's it.
Right. Well, yeah, I will. Well, thanks for having me, man.
Oh,
it's
no
always
problem.
good talking to you.
Thanks for having me too. So I'm going to keep doing a stream just a little while longer for the people listening, but thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep, thanks.
Yep.
See you, everybody.
All right. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I think DroneTech will get banned tonight. They'll bring up a trans issue and he'll get... Yeah, I mean, it is a question that I get a lot from people, like, why do I even debate these people? Because it is frustrating. It's not fun. I love debate. I really do. But it's like, when you can't, you know, how do you agree? Like, just little things. Like, you'll get in one of these debates. This will happen on DroneTech. I don't remember all the topics, but one of the topics is, are you ready for this? That is my baby crib, by the way. So this is my office. Let me show you. This was... you remember I had the wood panel with the American flag? That was this wall. And now that's part of my decorations for my baby's room. Let me make sure I got this. So I'm in a different spot. And the reason is, I'm finding out my first lesson of being a dad is, I don't own anything anymore. So my wife said, hit the bricks. Your office is now the baby's room. So I had to move upstairs. Normally I would broadcast from upstairs, but the problem is, my Wi-Fi, it's really good, like, in any given hour, it's good 59 minutes and 30 seconds. But then it'll cut off for 30 seconds, then I lose all my live streamers. So because my router's in this room, I had to set up a temporary setup just so I could use an actual Ethernet cord. Yeah, I hear you, Chris. Yeah, rest in peace, office. Yeah. That is the baby crib, though. Registered Democrat for 10 years and you switched. Yeah. I did not learn that when I got married, but I'm excited. I don't care. And it actually makes sense because this room's downstairs in my house, and so I got bumped up to an upstairs room. But eventually, the baby's crib, obviously, we want it downstairs, and our bedroom's downstairs, so it all makes sense. But that's why I'm in a temporary setup. And the crib's a nice armrest. I think I look cool, you know. But I don't have my flag behind me or anything like that because that's just the door to the living room. But yeah, these debates, like, I get it. People ask why I do them, and it's frustrating. It really is. You know, it's not fun to have to deal with. Oh, this is what I was saying. So, DroneTech's debate tonight, one of the topics. Are you ready for this? This is one of the topics that's actually going to be debated, allegedly on a 4-on-4 panel, but normally it's more like 6-on-8 or 6-on-2. Is the media biased for the Democrats? Isn't that the most... How is that a debate? Is the media biased towards the Democrats? That's going to be a debate. And DroneTech will have to debate people that with a straight face are going to say, no, of course it's not biased. What are you talking about? Rush Limbaugh, Fox News. It's not biased. And you'll be able to, DroneTech will be able to say, look, here's independent places that looked and said that 93% of all coverage about Donald Trump is negative, compared to Barack Obama, that something like 70-something% was positive of Barack Obama, blah, blah, blah. They'll say, yeah, that's all deserved. That's not bias. How do you have a debate when something, like, you could say, yeah, sure, it's biased, but it's okay. You could say that. They're a private company. They can do whatever they want. But they won't. They'll say, no, it's not biased. DLive is someone on Twitch asks, is DLive better for right-wing streams? I don't know. I think in my experience, DLive's better to just not have getting you booted off and censored. So that might tend to have more of a right-wing audience. I can tell you this. I've had people on Twitch that have been more harassing towards me that come from the left. I haven't seen any of that in DLive. However, I will say that both on DLive and Twitch, I've had people that claim to be white supremacists that have harassed me. But on DLive, I haven't had any left-wingers like follow me into Twitter or send me nasty emails. I have had that with Twitch. I've had people report me on Twitch coming from the left. What's up, Q? Feel free to ask a question. So, you know, for what it's worth. But I would say that there's DLive, I would guess, is a far smaller platform than Twitch. I much prefer it to Twitch. But certainly you don't see a dominance in political discussion like you do on Twitch. Twitch, it's like 90% of the streamers are left-wing. Q, trolling or joking around. Why haven't I seen you show your support for Black Lives Matter? Because they're a Marxist terrorist organization. Modern day debate or the kill stream, I would go on. Now that I have more free time, I would do something like that. I don't really have connections to those people, but sure, I would do it. Yeah, don't use Google, use DuckDuckGo, Foxy. I found the same thing. I'll remember a Bureau of Justice statistic graph that I saw, and I'll go back to look it up in Google and can't find it, and then it'll be like the first thing when I type in on DuckDuckGo. So, but yeah, DroneTech will have a difficult time tonight, and not because DroneTech's not capable of arguing. He'll do fine, right? But it'll be frustrating for him, just like it always is for me. One, because these panels are out of control, and I don't mean this to denigrate Dylan or anyone on the left even. It's just too many people to have 9 people on a show. It's too many. You know, it starts to become like a CNN panel. You can't really get in depth into a discussion. Like in a 1-on-1 or a 2-on-2 debate, you could get really into an issue. Oftentimes it doesn't happen, but you can. With 9 people, what if everyone wants to take it in a slightly different direction? Then it's just like ships passing and you're not really having a discussion. Red Pill, what are my thoughts on Fuentes? I actually haven't watched a lot of Fuentes. I've seen claims that he was a Holocaust denier. If that's true, I have no sympathy for that. I don't know if he's a racial supremacist. I find those claims to probably be dubious because they sound like claims of people that just want to smear people like we see all the time. So from what the little bit I've seen of Nick Fuentes, and it's been very little, maybe 5 to 10 minutes of content. I agreed at the time with what he was saying. I don't even remember what it was, though. But I can't really comment on him. I've heard allegations about him, but it's the same sort of smears I've heard from other people, like about Joe Rogan or Dave Rubin, that were garbage. So I just don't know. I don't know what to say about Nick Fuentes. Is RPG on Twitch? You guys can see in the video, right? You can see the chat that I'm seeing, right? Is RPG on Twitch? I don't know. But yeah, you guys can see everything. Yeah. I deserve more views. I agree. I don't know. I got to get better at editing. Look, and for those of you that, like, if you understood my schedule, it's very difficult because consider this. Let's say with the home healthcare job, I would go into work Sunday night and then I'm there 24/7 until Thursday afternoon, right? my wife's pregnant, so I come home Thursday afternoon. I finally get to see my wife that I haven't seen for 3.5 days, right? So we have dinner or something. I'm usually tired. I go to bed. Then I have a second job, so Thursday or Friday I go out and do my life insurance stuff. I come home. The only day I have off with my wife is Saturday, so that's a day I'm spending with her, and then Sunday I'm back to work. So it's hard for me to do consistent content. I have no idea. If I get downtime at my other job, I do an hour or 2 hour video. But I never know when that's going to be. So hopefully now that I can have a more consistent schedule, the more money you all donate to me, or if you buy life insurance from me, it'll give me more free time to be able to work on my technical skills, editing, and things like that. So hopefully that drives my viewership up. This isn't restreamed. The chat's not restreamed to DLive? Is that what you're saying? Huh. Who's that behind me? No one. No one's behind me. How do I feel about not respecting the wishes of RPG? Yeah, it's nonsense. I did a video about this that you can check out. Let me check DLive for a second. Remind me to answer that question again. Yeah, the chat's there. It's right in the right. I can see it in DLive. It's these blue boxes. I see it on my DLive. But anyways, so I did a video. It was like, why was the media not interested in finding out the final wishes of Herman Cain? Did they talk to his family? What if Herman Cain's final wish was, I really hope that we continue voting the same way that we always have, and we reject the idea of universal mail-in ballots? Would Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and AOC gave speeches and said, look, we have to respect the dying wishes of a great man, an entrepreneur, a black man who built a business from the ground up, became one of the most successful politicians in this country. We have to respect his wishes. Do you think they would have said that? Of course they wouldn't have. It's a joke, is what it is. Everybody knows it's a joke. And I can't even believe that people are taking this seriously. It's like, yeah, okay, that's interesting anecdotally. It means absolutely nothing. So, yeah, the video shows the chat, no platform, so yeah. But yeah, I couldn't tell you about Nick Fuentes, and I don't know who you mean by Charlie Modus. I don't know who that is either. But, and whatever, I'm not going to smear them because I don't know. And I noticed that too, Pifferfish. That's something I should have commented. She said until there's a new president. So theoretically, if you were to follow her wish to the letter of the law and Trump wins, he still wouldn't be allowed to appoint a new justice for the next 4 years because he's the same president. Right, that's exactly right, Pepperfish. Yeah, I caught that as well. It's just nonsense. Look, if Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Tucker Carlson said this, I said it before, but it's true. If her final words were, oh, I hope that, I'm not replaced until the election's over, that's sad. I hope her final thoughts were of her family. That's basically all I have to say about it. Yeah, I don't know. I've never even heard of Charlie Ward. So, if you want to know people that I follow, I think Tucker Carlson's awesome. I love Tucker. I follow him. I don't have cable, though, so sometimes I watch his videos on YouTube. I'd say I watch maybe 50% of them. I like Scott Adams a lot, who's the Dilbert creator. He's not always right-wing, but he thinks about things differently, which I like. I like Dave Rubin. I watch some of him. Catherine Herridge is good on Twitter. Molly Hemingway is good on Twitter. Independent content creators that like on YouTube are the people that you see me hang out with that I like. I like DroneTech. My friend SJG Perspective, I like listening to him. Sarah Courier. My friend Let's Be Frank, fantastic channel. Doug Ducote that I've worked with. Now, I don't agree with everything they say all the time, but I think they're great content creators and they're out there doing good work, and predominantly they lean conservative. If you're looking for left-wing content creators, I like Dylan Burns as a left-wing content creator. I think that he tries to be fair, which is better than most left-wing people. I used to go on this guy Prime K's show, but me and him kind of had a falling out because I thought that he was, as I said earlier, the moderation he was doing was bad. And he was just like coming after me for whatever reason. But still, I'd recommend his channel if you're left-wing. I recommend independent content creators, even if I disagree with them, more than I would recommend corporate media. Because I think the corporate media is just disgusting. So, right, if a conservative justice... Yeah, what was Scalia's dying wish? Maybe Scalia said, I don't want to be replaced. Does that mean the whole discussion of McConnell being bad for not having a hearing for Merrick Garland goes out the window because that was Scalia's dying wish? Oh, it was Scalia's dying wish. No problem. I agree with you, D. Gullo. It's shocking to believe people believe the Democrats. Huh. I don't know. what's going on there. Reader sex manifesto will make you barf. That's funny. Michael Tracy's great. Like, yeah, I like Michael. Like, people on the left that are in kind of more of a mainstream media. Michael Tracy, Matt Taibbi, Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald. I don't agree with them on everything, but they've at least been able to call out the corruption of the Russia coup and things that have occurred like that. So Michael Tracy, say what you want. He despises Trump. I disagree with him politically. But one of the things Michael Tracy did was he literally got in his car and went city to city, going to cities all across the country, particularly cities that you haven't heard about in the news, where there were riots from Black Lives Matter, and asking the locals what they thought. And he has so much footage, primarily of people of color, because that's where most of these riots occurred, in those communities, of people talking about how their lives are devastated because of the riots from Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And he's like, why isn't the corporate media covering this? I agree. I thought Michael Tracy was great in that. Oh, yeah, thanks, Free for Fish. But yeah, I like Michael Tracy as well. Again, I disagree with his politics. One of the questions, I would love to talk to Aaron Mattei or Michael Tracy or one of these people that realize the dangers of the Russia coup and the lies about Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. Why are you still voting Democrat? Like, I don't know. It's weird to me. So, yeah, any other specific questions? I've probably got 20 more minutes. Yeah, Michael Tracy did get attacked. Absolutely. You're absolutely right, he did. For that. Oh, Sarah's mods don't let anyone talk. That could be true. I don't know. I really like Sarah, content. I'm oftentimes, because usually when I'm on her show and I'm not in the chat. But I'll probably be doing more stuff with her later. And Sarah and I have disagreements. For example, Sarah's against same-sex marriage. I'm for it. There's certainly, room for disagreement. Absolutely. But yeah, I try to let I'm glad, I basically don't have mods, and the few I do are really good, and you would have to do a lot to get booted off here, Sometimes I'll personally boot someone off if they're just spamming. Tim Pool, that's another person. Dave Rubin was considered a leftist. Joe Rogan, and I don't know that Rogan's completely a conservative at this point, but you get the picture. And I say it all the time. I have videos on here saying, why is it that there's people on the left that are pushing back against Black Lives Matter harder than people on the right? Not independent creators, but I mean mainstream figures. So I could see Brett and Eric Weinstein pushing back against Black Lives Matter. I could see Michael Tracy, right? I could see people like Joe Rogan. I could see Dave Rubin. I could see Glenn Greenwald. I could see, I don't know about Glenn Greenwald. Who am I thinking of? Sam Harris. These are all left-wing people that hate Trump. They're making a more effective case against Black Lives Matter than any of the conservatives other than Trump and maybe Matt Gaetz and a couple others. I didn't see a guy saying about America being... Oh, yeah, I know Rogan endorsed Bernie, but he's also been critical of the Democrats. I get that. No, I don't mind you muting the person that just... If you're saying something that's controversial, I don't mind it. But if you keep spamming it, then it's whatever. RGB sucked at quarterback. Yeah, but now back up for the Ravens, right? RGB. Ravens looking pretty good. Lamar Jackson. But yeah, any other specific questions? I got probably 20 minutes. I'll be out here at 3:30. I got to make it look like I did something while the wife was at work, so I'll do dishes or something. But, yeah, what do you guys think? Let me ask you a question then. If people, what do you guys think of the debates? Is that something I should do more or less of? Yeah, I'm critical of the GOP, absolutely. All the time. And I ran as a Republican, but I'm still critical of them. Where was the GOP? Let me ask you this. When the lockdowns were occurring, where was the GOP? When trillions of dollars were going to abortion clinics and stuff? Hey, thank you, Ramon. Said I'd love to see me on Modern Day Debate. Who on the right do you think is a good debater? I think that people like Ben Shapiro is a good debater. It's on the right. I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but I think he's a good debater. I think Steven Crowder's on the right, who's a pretty good debater. Other than that, you have people that I don't know that I would call them debaters. Like, for example, Tucker holds his own when he has a guest that's on the left and they're having an argument, but I wouldn't really consider that a debate. And then when it comes to kind of what we consider like these debate bros that you see on Twitch, they're almost all universally left-wing. I have some friends that I've met on there. There's a guy named Wake the Beast who's a phenomenal person. Wake the Beast is a very religious person. I don't know if he's a preacher or something like that. I only met him as a debate partner on one of these things, but he is not only incredibly intelligent and passionate, but the sound of his voice is amazing. The guy sounds awesome. Like, and he's not like me. He isn't getting animated. He's very stoic, and he comes off as very genuine, so I really liked him. I debated with someone called Lecture Fan that I'm going to be doing a video with next week. He's a conservative. I think that his stylistically was more kind of confrontational than me, but I thought a lot of the points you were making was good. Yeah, Foxy, look, if you're on the right and you want on these debate panels, they are desperate for people. Desperate. Because it's 90% crazy communist Democrats. They can't find right-wingers, especially right-wingers that are willing to put up with their abuse. So that's what, so consider this. I would consider myself a casual friend of Dylan Burns, who was the first channel that I did one of these big 8-panel debates on. And I think we'd probably disagree in 90% of things politically, but I would think he would think I'm a decent guy and he likes when I come on his show. I know, for example, when I did the intersectionality debate, Dylan claimed that show for a one-on-one debate did as well as the big shows he does, and so he was happy with that. So, that's on Twitch. Now, fast forward to the discussion I was talking about earlier, where we were discussing should LGBTQ issues be taught in sex ed in schools. And, I'm not going to rehash the whole situation, but basically people were accusing me of being belligerent to trans people when I wasn't doing that. I was being polite. I was just disagreeing. And I started to get messages from people on my Twitter feed that were like, Rob, be careful. Twitch bans people if they think that you're being abusive to trans people. And you're getting reported by all of these left-wingers now that are saying they're reporting you on Dylan's chat. Now, I usually don't watch the moderator's chat. I know they're all left-wingers and despise me, almost all of them. But, so what I said after the debate was, look, if you're on Twitch and you're a left-winger and you're trying to report me because, you think that you want to silence me, you're just hurting Dylan. You're hurting yourself. Do you want just an echo chamber? Do you want these debates just to be 4 left-wingers sitting around like, yeah, I agree. Is that what you want? That's fine. I don't like doing those 8-person debates. That particular debate I did because someone dropped out and Dylan called me and said, or Discorded me and said, can you fill in for this? I said, sure. But I don't like doing them, and I've made no secret about that. And it's not because I don't like Dylan, or I don't like Prime Case, or I don't like Demon Mom. It has nothing to do with that. I don't like the 8-person debates. I just don't like them. I feel like you'd spend 7/8 of the times just me sitting there listening, and I'm like, this is 3.5 hours, and I can hardly get a word in edgewise. I agree. 2-on-2 and 1-on-1 is the best format. Sushi's decent. I've talked to Sushi. Right, good. Sushi's smart to quit the 4-on-4s. And then you have people that, and DroneTech does this, and it's really good on Twitch for your viewership. So let's say I was to do this video right now, and I'm on Twitch right now. I could theoretically say, hey, everybody who wants, jump on my Discord, and we'll all have a chat about gun control. And then there'll be 14 people on here. And people like that for some reason. I'm not going to do it. I will open it up. People could come on. We could have 3-4 people, but that's it. After that, it's worthless. Like, you can't even tell who's talking. People are talking over each other. Yeah, 5 people may be the max. Foxy got banned. Yeah. Yeah, Sushi's good. I do like him as well. And there's others whose names I don't particularly remember that I think were fine. And by the way, there's a guy, a self-proclaimed anarchist. His name was Last Username. I've done 2 debates with him. We surprisingly agree on a lot. Right? And he was respectful to me when other people were saying that I was being a bigot. He was like, I don't think he's being a bigot. He just has a difference of opinion with you. And there are other people on the left. I think for what it's worth, Destiny, I think he's a solid debater on the left. And I've seen, I don't know these people very well, but I've watched a few videos of Destiny's, and oftentimes he can come off as quite rude. So can I sometimes. I'll say this, for someone who probably disagrees with me politically on everything, Destiny was nothing but a gentleman to me behind the scenes, at all. That's someone who on any given live stream has, 8,000 people watching. He took someone like me on that has 10 people watching and gave me a fair shake. So I have nothing negative to say about him. let's see. Yeah, safe spaces for socialism. Yeah, I agree with you on Netflix cuties, though. That's softcore child porn. And the fact that it's still so popular on Netflix and so many mainstream people are defending it is utterly disgusting. And I say this a lot. I think the biggest issue in this election is the coup that we see against Trump. Because as I said in my last video, and even here with DroneTech, that influences every other thing we hear. COVID, Black Lives Matter, bailing out bankers, wars in places like Syria. All of that is because there are unelected bureaucrats that are really running our government. And the coup is as public as they've become. So now the evidence is right there. It's no longer a conspiracy theory. It's right in front of you, the evidence. And so if they're lying to you about this coup, they're probably lying to you about COVID, which you could see why they say you can't go to the Trump rally, but you can go to the Black Lives Matter rally. You can see that they're lying to you about climate change, all this other crap, right? Like, I truly believe that. However, having said that, oh, well, Destiny's always debating while playing video games. Yeah, that's his thing. But it gets him huge amounts of subscribers, so good for him, man. Makes a living doing it. So, let's see, where was I? You notice, though, with Destiny, and I'm the same way. I could do that. I could have a conversation with someone on the phone and be debating someone online, typing or something. But then when it's like something you have to really think about, you have to pause. And I saw Destiny do that a couple times. I was like, wait. You had to pause. But anyways, having said all that about the coup, it's hard to explain to an average person who lost their job because of COVID or whatever why this story of James Comey and Rod Rosenstein and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Susan Rice and all this crazy stuff, FISA warrants and national security letters and quid pro quos, and like this stuff's hard for a person who's just working 9 to 5 to wrap their head around. So it's hard to get traction on this story. But the simple story that we should be using as conservatives to get traction is that party is the party of pedophilia. Cuties is softcore porn. Period. If they're willing to defend that and claim a moral high ground, what do you think that means about the rest of the issues that they're defending? And that's why the Epstein situation was such an important one, because that had the ability to topple the corrupt establishment. Because you might not be able to convince people why this coup is bad or why FISA warrants and things like that were bad. But they know that child sex trafficking is bad. So get rid of Epstein. I thought that about Destiny Foxy. I heard that him and Vaush got into it over Kyle Rittenhouse. And what do I disagree with Ben Shapiro on? So there are several things. One, I think that he's too reticent to defend Israel. Now, let me be quite clear. I'm not some Israel basher. To the contrary, I think Israel gets a bad rap 90% of the time. The fact that the UN's universally going after Israel with their condemnations and things like that, I think is terrible. And I think that like the idea that Israel was bad for wanting their embassy to be in Jerusalem because then it would have forced the Palestinians to attack them is ridiculous. And I think if our country had missiles lobbed at us from Mexico every day, that we would rightfully defend ourselves. However, I also think that Israel has undue foreign policy influence in the United States through organizations like AIPAC. So it's not as simple as the sides want you to believe. There's one side that wants you to believe Israel's always right and they're our best ally and we have to do whatever for them. And then there's the other side that believes they're Zionists, they're controlling all of our decisions, they're getting us into all these wars. I think the truth's somewhere in between. But I think that Ben, for someone, for example, that complains about cancel culture and facts over feelings, as soon as it's something that seems to be directed at Jewish people, all of a sudden that flies out the window. So, for example, Ilhan Omar saying it's all about the Benjamins. He freaked out about that. Why? I didn't care. Or another example, he has no problem with like something that Joy Behar would say, or no problem with Kathy Griffin, or no problem with Joy Reid. I also don't have a problem. I don't want them to lose their jobs over that. But as soon as Rosie O'Donnell said what she said about Valerie Jarrett, Ben Shapiro said, yeah, she should be fired. So issues like that, I disagree. I also disagree with Ben that I think that he is too slow to condemn obvious corruption. So, for example, when he was on Joe Rogan, he talked about never attribute to corruption what you could contribute to incompetence. And so he talked about, I don't see any evidence that the FBI is behaving badly. I don't see any evidence that Mueller's team's behaving badly. At this point, it's all just a wild conspiracy theory. But somehow someone who's a professional in media like Ben Shapiro with incredible access, far more than I have, not only to the White House, but to other media outlets, he was 2 years behind me on that story. And so things like that, I disagree with Ben Shapiro. And there could be more. Yeah, and he seems like Ben seems to be pro-war far more often than me. Let's see. If we condemn cuties, we should condemn pageant shows. It's slightly different. Now, I don't know. I've never watched the pageant shows either. If the pageant shows have girls in bikinis twerking, then yes, obviously. If it's just them in like flowing gowns and stuff, that's less problematic. But I still get queasy with the pageant shows anyways. So I wouldn't have a problem with, criticizing it. But I don't know the specifics of them. Israel's flagrant in their law breaking at times. So's Palestine. Let's see. See you, Pipperfish. Thanks, man. Vaush, I don't know as well as Destiny. Someone wanted me to debate Vaush on the 1350 statistics. They kept saying that he thoroughly debunked it. He did not. I watched that video, Vaush. That's the only video of his I ever watched. He agreed with me. First off, he says that you could cite that statistic and not be a racist, which I appreciate him saying. That's absolutely true. For those of you who don't know, it's that blacks make up 13% of the population but commit 50% of homicides. That's the 1350 statistic. He also correctly says that white racists use this to say that black people are inferior. I agree, that could be at me. But he says that you're not necessarily a racist if you bring it up. And he says what we should do is look at the reasons that black commit those crimes. That's exactly what I say. Exactly. But he stops short, he still endorses Black Lives Matter and doesn't correctly then go to the logical conclusion that this proves that their anger is misplaced. It's not a problem with policing, it's a problem with why are blacks committing this violence. Maybe it's racism, maybe it's policies, maybe it's culture. There's a discussion to be had, I agree with that. But it's not the police. Or is anyone having, oh yeah, I hope no one's having a problem with sound. I heard that Ben's wife's a doctor. I heard that once or twice. I also heard that Sean Hannity's a black belt. Right, public citizen, you're actually right. I agree with you, the 1350 thing, but you're actually making the point against Black Lives Matter even better. So public citizen says the 1350 thing's deceptive because it's not all black people. Totally agree. In fact, I was saying it with DroneTech earlier. I would like there to be better statistics. For example, the black people that live in my neighborhood in rural Clarion, I don't think that the statistics will bear out the black people that live in rural areas. I think that it's probably about the same with people of other colors, the amount of crime that's committed, violent crime. It's not the race as much as it is the specific geographical areas. So, for example, if you have incredible poverty with people that are in high population density areas, then you're probably more likely to see violence. It just so happens that there's a lot of black people that live in those areas. But that, again, that doesn't show racism. Right? So there's more likely that people that live in these basic war zones like inner city Chicago are going to have violent interactions with the police. I don't cite the 1350 statistic to say, oh, black people are inferior. I cite it in response to Black Lives Matter's charge that blacks are 2.5 times more likely to be shot by police. Well, what are the reasons for that? Black Lives Matter just wants you to say, just like with Breonna Taylor, is there any evidence that Breonna Taylor was shot for being black? Any? Can anyone give me one piece of evidence? Nope. We just assert, oh, it's because she's black. That's what it is. Even though there's no evidence. The same is true with this, blacks are 2.5 more likely to be shot. Well, it must be racism. But you're like, wait a minute, wouldn't it make sense that there's more violent altercations in these communities if there's more violence in those communities? Right? So, yeah, I agree with you. It is misleading. And by the way, statistics aren't racist. You could use them in a racist manner. For, like, take racism out of it. Just take bigotry. Like, for example, if you said men commit 80% of rapes, that doesn't make you anti-man. That's just, I don't know what the number is, but that's true. That's what the statistics bear out. Now, if you say men commit 80% of rapes, therefore I don't trust any men, and I don't want to live by any men, now you're being sexist. But the numbers aren't sexist. It's how you're using them. I agree with you on both those points, Public. We have a racism problem in all races, though I don't think it's as bad as you would think. And I think it is worse against Asians and white people because it's not that I think that other people are more likely to be racist. It's that institutions have backed up and supported that other racism. Again, the Democrats are currently supporting removing Proposition, 320 or whatever, in California that says you can't discriminate based on race. They want to remove that. Because they want to discriminate against white people. And Vaush is a communist, I've heard, but I haven't personally seen him. I heard that Vaush said that Rittenhouse did not have the right to defend himself, so that sounds ridiculous. I also heard Vaush, maybe it was a snippet, so I hate to say this, but possibly suggest that we should lower ages of consent. I think that's a bad idea. Yeah, I hear you, Foxy. Yeah, education's a nightmare, man. I went for speech communication for my master's, and half my courses were just about how I'm a bad person for being white. Yeah, public citizen, send me an invite, man. I'll check it out. Again, I get a lot of offers for stuff, and I'm willing, when I got free time, I'm willing to, participate. But, I also have a family and a life, too, and I'm trying to start the second job. But yeah, I'd be happy to join in. I'm always good for a discussion. Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you have right-wingers or not. I'll join in. Ecom says, Rob, if black men are more likely to be shot by police, then why are more white people shot each year? Because there's more white people. And that's simple. For example, let's say that there are 100 people that live in a town, and 98 of them are white and 2 of them are black. If the cops shoot one black person, 50% of black people were shot. But if they shoot 10 white people, that's only roughly 10% of white people shot. So the black person's more likely to be shot, but far more white people were shot. So, for example, blacks make up 13% of the population compared to whites making up about 60%. So even if blacks are 2.5 times more likely to be shot, there will still be less total black shot than total white shot. Yeah, I agree with you, Public. That's why predominantly I usually talk to people more on my Discord and stuff on my channel that disagree with me, because I think it's good to have a counterbalance. If it's just a bunch of people agreeing with me, it's not that fun and not as informative. But yeah, as far as modern day debate and stuff, I don't know those guys or ladies. I don't know much about the channel, but I'd be willing to go on and do some debates here and there. I don't mind it, and hopefully their moderation's pretty good on there. Oh, I did see Vaush one other time, and it was Vaush and Destiny debating 2 white nationalists, which that was funny, I guess. Yeah, Foxy, leave a comment when I'm done with the live stream. The same with you, Public Citizen. Just leave a link or to your video or whatever. Not on the live chat, but afterwards, so that I'll be able to see it. No, that's not wrong, Ecoms. That's absolutely right. Your question are, if black men are more likely to be shot by police, why are more white people shot each year? It's simple mathematics. That's not wrong at all. Yeah, I like Sticks, by the way. That's another person I like on the right. I also like Razor Fist. Yeah, I don't blame Sticks for not debating. I would debate Vaush maybe once, but I'm not up for just the disillusion and things like that that comes with him. So, alrighty, I think I'll be heading out here. Yeah, so I got that rush. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. I'll be doing my radio show with Todd Bartley and Carlos Saldivia. So, yeah, that'll be coming up tomorrow. And like I said, I'm going to be reaching out to an audience. Just so you know, my schedule, my next 2 weeks of work, I'm going to be doing trainings every day. So I'll be working like 10 to 11 hours Monday through Friday. So I don't know what my schedule will be on those days. I'll still be trying to do videos. I think I'm doing a video 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. Tuesday night with my friend Let's Be Frank. Please check out Let's Be Frank's channel. He's incredibly generous. He's donated like over $150 to me recently, and he's the sole reason that some of my videos are getting, instead of 60, 70 views, are getting like 2,000 views. So I really can't thank him enough. And I'm not just saying because he's been generous to me, but he's actually a fantastic channel that I think you'll like. So check it out. It's Let's Be Frank. Very, very great person. It's not a sampling error. That's not true. Do you Okay, Ecoms, real quick, if hopefully you can. Do you think that the population numbers are true? Do you think that blacks make up 13% of the population and whites are over 60? Susan took off checking channels on live. It sucks. Susan, I don't know. I think you would agree with me the population numbers are correct. Do you think that numbers of dead are correct that were shot by police, where do you think that there was a sampling error? I just don't get your argument. Like, that doesn't prove. I don't know why. What? Like, this is an argument that I don't know where you think gets you. It's just, you're just factually wrong, unless you're saying that either the census numbers are incorrect and there's vastly more black people than have been reported, or you think that there's vastly less black people that have been shot that are actually reported. I don't know. But all right, thanks so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. I will talk to you all soon, and see you here tomorrow at 11 a.m. for my radio show. Thanks so much, and as always, have a good one.